Welcome back to the State of the Arc podcast. My name is Mike.
My name's Kaysen.
This is the penultimate episode of this podcast.
It is.
Everything comes to a head here.
Yeah.
All of the discussion, all of the setups, are paid off here. And it's only 3 hours, a little less. I think I played through this section that we went through today in 2 hours and 50 minutes.
It was shorter than I thought, yeah.
And it is a novel's worth of content. It is
Yeah.
way more.
And you can tell they're just jamming stuff in that they were hoping to actually put in the game, and they're just like, we have no choice but to literally just explain it in just didactic, straightforward, just boom, right in your face, and every scene after scene, it's like that. And then the next scene, it's even more just like direct explanations. And all of a sudden, we're in a new place, and they're just giving us more exposition. And then it's like, but anyways, it's crazy. It's crazy.
It is so difficult, just because, partly because of what you're saying, the amount that they are just dumping on you here.
Yes, it's tons.
On top of it being very layered, complex information. On top of it being a very rushed translation that is poor.
That's true. There's layers of why it's so difficult.
Making sense of all of this.
And they bit off more than they could chew in making this game, period. And so that just add that layer in, you know.
So there is a ton to break down, and I am feeling the pressure because it's like, all the work that has been done up to this point, like if you can't explain this part, then you've failed.
Well, oh geez.
That's how I'm feeling right now. So we took an extra day. We were supposed to film yesterday.
Yeah,
we took an extra day for me to just like really freaking research and get my notes in order and make sure that it's accurate and I'm talking with some other people online. Trying to get like some of their interpretations on things. And so it's been crazy this week. And I really hope that this all comes together for you guys and that it makes sense for you as well.
Hey, we'll see.
You said that
I feel like I did okay.
Yeah.
I feel like I did okay. I mean, a lot of games, especially the types of games that we play, deal with really weird themes and crazy stuff happens, especially towards the end, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, what's going on here? Like, all of a sudden gravity or like the time compression or freaking whatever the heck this whole game. and it's like, hey, what's going on, right?
Yeah.
Well, the idea, at the point I got to within Xenogears, within this last playthrough, led me to about the point that I would be playing any of the other games that we play that are considered, meaningful, deep games.
Yeah.
And so I didn't feel so horribly overwhelmed and underprepared and completely in the dark. I felt about where I would normally feel given any of the other games.
And that was my intention.
Well, good.
With pointing out things along the way.
Well, that's nice. So for me, it was like, that's weird, but not like, holy crap, what does this even mean at all? Like, yeah.
When I got to this point on the first playthrough,
I would have too.
I was like, what? What the frick? What? I didn't get anything. Well, I got like the tip of the iceberg part of the plot.
Which is, they're different bodies going in time and they can do different things and there's different,
I understood how we got from A to Z.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what any of it meant.
Right.
And or maybe I had pieces of it, but like it was like I kind of think this is what it's trying to say, but I don't know how this relates to that or this.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to hopefully get to today.
Well, we'll see. That's a large promise.
It's a lot of work to do this, so please support us on Patreon.
Yes, please.
All right, the first scene, we left off where you go to Raziel's tree and fight Grahf. And then...
And we went through that, right?
We went through that
whole thing.
And
because there's nowhere to save.
Because you go right from there to Golgatha. It should be Golgatha, which is the crucifixion site. And they're trying to bait, or I should say Krelian is trying to bait Ellie to come out to try and save Fei.
Because he doesn't need any of us. He only really needs her.
Right.
Or he only really wants her.
Yes.
That's probably what I say.
And so imagery here is a little weird.
Okay.
What did you feel about the gears and Choo Choo being crucified?
So when I first saw it, I was like, oh, it's a crucifixion. That's hardcore. And then I was like, oh, they're crucifying us inside our gears. So we're just like sitting in a pilot cockpit.
It's so silly.
I mean, they've gone through some lengths to explain that gears can feel too, or gears have some type of sentience.
Autonomy,
gears
yeah.
have something relevant to like they're a part of life as well in some weird way. Okay, but we don't care about the gears. We just care about the people inside the gears.
Right.
And so it's just like, okay, so they're sitting comfortably. Now Choo Choo, that's uncomfortable. That's rough.
It's just
but it's giant Choo Choo. It's like big mega Choo Choo,
Yeah.
right? And so, anyways.
All I know is it would have been a lot more impactful if the characters were actually hanging on those crosses.
Oh, absolutely.
Not their
absolutely.
gears.
And the gears they're sitting comfortable in the cockpit, so it's no big deal. Just wait, a week until they starve or can't get enough water.
I don't know.
And then they eventually die
There's
of
a part of me that even wonders if they're in them, because I know that the
You're
imagery
right,
here is abstract.
The abstract, and it
because-
shows them standing outside of their gears.
Well, regardless,
I would
it looks
say
really dumb.
if Krelian just killed them, that would have been overplaying his hand with the Gazel ministry for something that happens later, right?
Oh, sure.
And so, if Krelian just puts them all up and kills them all, Gazel is going to be like, we needed some of those.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah,
you know?
they need Rico and Billy and Citan.
Yeah,
and
those are the vessels, right? And
Yeah.
so he just, put up on the cross the people who were disposable, who the Gazel had no interest in, or not no interest, but no use for
Need
personally.
for, yeah.
So maybe that's it.
They didn't
so he still
carry-
needed to play towards the Gazel. If the Gazel were eliminated before this scene, I would think maybe he would have put more people up.
Sure.
There. Maybe.
Yeah, there's the genetic factor, and this is going to be a huge part of what we talk about here in a minute. The genetic factor that allows those specific characters to be able to pair with anima relics.
Ah, yes.
That's the reason Gazel was interested in those bodies.
Right.
Because
yeah.
they had the animus factor, the
Yes.
ability to pair with the anima.
Yeah.
Which is a genetic thing. And the Gazel felt like they were the only ones, or should be the only ones,
Should be, yeah.
to be able to pair with anima. Which is why they weren't interested in the characters earlier on. They were going to just kill everyone in Kislev.
Right.
And then they realized, wait a minute,
Like, wait, we can
They
we can take their bodies.
anima factor,
Yeah.
or animus factor. This changes things, right? And then they started to become more interested in them. But not in Maria or Choo Choo or Faye
Choo-choo, of course
or
not Choo-choo.
Emeralda after Krelian's done with her
Yes.
whole nanomachine stuff.
Then, yeah, she's useless.
The rest of them are now useless to them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which, by the way, well, whatever. She can just absorb her way out of it, right?
I don't know how you
Whatever.
kill a
It's-
nanomachine colony.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, okay.
Unless you inject a nanomachine colony with other nanomachines that are specifically designed to kill
Kill
those
those
nanomachines.
nanomachines. Sure, yeah, that's possible. I'm glad they didn't explore that possibility,
Yeah.
because that would have complicated things even more.
Okay, so that part of the imagery is weird, but the rest of the scene is actually really quite good. I thought it was really typical of the Type 2 Enneagram anti-type character Ellie
Yeah.
to be, totally willing to sacrifice her life to
Yes,
save
of
others.
course. Yes,
She's like,
of course.
if it gives
It was
Faye
perfect.
and them even the slightest chance of escape, then I will fight. I don't care if it costs me my life.
Yes,
it's
of
like,
course.
you're doing it
That was
again,
very direct.
Sophia.
Yes.
What are you doing? Didn't work last time either.
But she can't. It's like a
Yeah.
genetic imperative. She has to do it.
It's
She
part of
can't
her innate
not.
personality.
Yeah.
It's her Type 2 personality.
I will say, though, the crucifixion scene would have probably been better if it wasn't just so abrupt. It was just, we were going impactful scene after impactful
bam,
scene
bam, bam.
without any transition. And it was just like, okay, now we're there. Boom, they're getting crucified. But it's like, we still haven't really recovered from what happened before
I know.
that. And so it's all just piling up. And it's because they didn't have enough time.
There's no room to breathe in between these
Yes.
scenes. And so
That's crazy. It's so dense.
When I got to the end of this 2 hours, 50 minutes of playing the game,
Yeah.
I was kind of like yelling at my screen, like, I've had enough. Like, just stop
Let me
talking
just,
for a
like,
second.
let me just-
stop talking.
Let me just fly around the map for a minute.
Can I just walk around for a little while?
No.
Please.
And then it's every half hour. There's a scheduled. You want to save, or like?
I know.
You can't even go to a save. Well, sometimes you can, but often you can't. It's just you need to decide right then and there. Are you going to commit to another at least 40 minutes of this?
It's a lot.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But in any case, Krelian, sends Rattan, which was a gear that that was
Yeah.
like observing us when we fought Emeralda earlier.
Yeah, but he's one of those really heavily synced gears, the
like-
Project M gears.
Right.
Yeah.
And Mugwort, his partner.
Yes, of course.
And they fight against Ellie. I thought it was a little strange that this wasn't actually turned into a real battle. Like, it's just a cutscene of them fighting.
It was.
I'm guessing they just didn't have time to design it.
I would hope
But-
so. I would hope so.
It seemed like a really good place to have a battle in this immense amount of just
Yeah.
cutscene dialogue
But
stuff.
when you do the abstract battle representation that RPGs do, but you don't let the character control it,
Yeah.
but it's not a cutscene,
Yeah.
it's weird.
Yeah.
It's weird to watch, and you're just like watching the one after each other hit, knock on the
Bam.
ground.
It's like
Oh,
taking
no,
turns
darn it. And then
a cutscene.
but you're exactly, but you're not involved, and so that makes it really,
It's funny.
really strange.
But there were a couple of things I liked about it. They have this camera move they'll do where they pan behind Ellie's gear.
I did like
and
the
they're just
dynamic camera.
huge, and they're just like
Yeah, they're
bam,
massive.
bam, bam, bam,
Yeah.
and it makes her look so small and powerless, and they're just like railing on her.
Yes, especially at the end there, because she like knocks him back, but then they get up, and she's like,
Yeah.
"How is this possible?"
And it kind of goes back and forth. It's a very Dragon Ball-like sequence where you think this guy's toast and this guy's definitely more powerful, but then they find like more power.
There's a secret. Yes. Oh, I did not reveal to you before, but I have an
have-
extra power.
yeah, nanomachines or whatever it is that keeps them going,
That
and then
revives them. Yeah.
I don't know if they do. I know
Well,
that
Miang
later Miang does.
Does yeah, but
Anyways, then she finds some inner strength to
Yes,
like
of
continue.
course.
But anyway, she ends up beating
well,
him.
that makes it a contest of wills, but that's
Yeah.
not necessarily how this one ends.
It's very anime, is what I'm getting at.
Yes, very
But it
much so.
works.
Very,
It's
very
not
much so.
like it's a good scene. I feel overall.
Yeah.
But she's really, really injured by the end of this, and Krelian takes her away, and he leaves them
She-
alive.
First, she does that crazy beam attack that just
Kills him.
kills him immediately,
Yeah.
and then she faints because that took like all of her energy or something. Yeah.
And so Fei is powerless to do anything, and Krelian and Grahf mock him for that weakness.
Yes.
But they leave him alive, and he's confused by that. He
Yes.
like even says like, I don't know why they left us alive.
Yeah.
We had to find out why they would do that, so we continued pursuing them.
Which is what they wanted, of course.
Yes, which is exactly what they wanted. And this is kind of the whole thing with like Miang and Krelian. They're basically just manipulating our party the whole time
Yes, the
to
whole
like
time.
bring everything together for this resurrection of
And
God.
you could say this is a little nonsensical, or it shouldn't work this way, but in a strange way, it actually it makes sense for me a little bit, understanding what we learned a little bit later about how Miang has been around for an incredibly long period of time, and she's been kind of making sure that this happens the way that it happens. So after 10,000 years, it's like it's not just one normal person's lifetime who just played their chess pieces so perfectly and they
Yeah.
understand the other people so perfectly that they do exactly what they want. It's like this is a whole process that has played out for a really long time that has led to these inevitable things that do end up happening, that they know would end up happening because they'd actually been through trial runs
Yes.
like before this several times.
10,000
And so
years.
they actually knew how to do it this time. It just made a lot more sense. It wasn't so like random or
Sure.
so like, oh, how coincidental,
Yeah. So then we get the first I felt comprehensible Gazel ministry scene in the whole game.
Which is also
Where I can
consequently the last
Yes.
Gazel ministry in the scene.
I
of the
finally felt like, hey, I understand what these guys are talking
I
about
get
for
what's
once.
going on.
So it cuts to a scene with Krelian with the Gazel ministry. They say, the fleshly body of God has been recovered. The anima and animus have all been obtained. All that is left to do is for us to change into the animus and become one with the mother persona. And Krelian says, that's incorrect.
Yes.
And then he starts unplugging them.
And they immediately are like, what? What are you doing? How could you do this? But here's the weird thing. Why not, if all they were going to do was become people and then go be absorbed into Mother God, why didn't Krelian just let them do that?
Good question. So it's because Krelian...
It's not like they were going to go against him or anything. They were just going to go to the slaughter to get absorbed into some
let's
thing.
Let's dig into some of his dialogue here,
'Kay.
where I think he kind of explains that. So he kind of goes into how like he only wanted them alive in order to use the geisha key.
That was
they
it.
were the ones
Yeah.
who could use the geisha key.
And Cain was the only one who could do some other thing.
Cain was the
Cain's
one
name?
stopping them from using the geisha key.
Ah, okay.
So
sure,
Cain and the Gazel ministry have
Yeah.
the ability to use the geisha key.
Right.
The ministry can't do it unless Cain allows them, but without
course.
Cain they could then do it.
'Kay.
So now that has been done and the humans got transformed into wells, which was part of the plan,
Right.
to obtain the biological parts needed to repair the Deus system, which we
Yeah.
will get into in a minute. This is the whole point, is
Right.
humans are going to be used as biological parts to like repair the Deus system that was on the Eldridge when it crashed. So it got all broken up and scattered around the world in the crash. And it needs to be repaired. It's going to be repaired with both like, steel and, like computer parts, but also with biological living parts, because that was what Deus was. Deus wasn't just a machine, it was like a biological machine.
Yeah.
So it needs both living, organic, and computer components. And that's what the geisha key did. Once the geisha key had been used, he doesn't need those guys anymore. And he says, they basically say in response to that, right, like, you're betraying your mother, or you're betraying the mother. And he says something along the lines of, this is the will of the other mother, right?
Right.
And he goes on to say that you got on the wrong track as to like what the purpose of all this was. You thought you would become God.
Right.
That's not what's happening here. We are giving ourselves to God, putting ourselves in the hand of God, and that they were trying to arrogantly like be in control of this, to like become God themselves. He also goes on to say that their genes were scattered because the Gazel ministry and Cain were, okay, hold on, really getting ahead of myself a little bit here.
It's in
Before
the dialogue, though.
before I talked about that,
Okay.
let's break down this line. He says, by combining these, and by these he means the anima, animus, and persona. And I will explain what that is in a second.
Yeah. That became
By
clear this time.
combining these with my nanomachines, humans will become living beings very much the equivalent of you. Actually, they may far surpass you in becoming worthy terminal interfaces for God. So you are no longer of any use to me. So he thinks he has come up with better animus than the original Gazel ministry for repairing God. So he doesn't need them.
That answers my previous question then.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why he is killing them, because he feels like he has created an even better animus than they could be in service of the resurrection of God. And that's because his nanotechnology, in conjunction with the fact that their genes got scattered. So they're not the only ones who can serve as animus. There are now people living who can be animus too.
Right.
And this is our party, like Billy and Rico, the people have this animus factor gene in them, right?
And I think Krelian knows we will do what he wants us to do. I don't know that Krelian believes the Gazel will do what he wants them to do.
Right.
He might think that as soon as they get bodies, they actually have their own idea, right?
Right,
And
exactly.
he's probably right with how this game has gone.
Yes. So he says, you're no longer of any use to me. Deus, the physical manifestation of God, only wants results. The means are insignificant to him. So this is my arc plan, my Project Noah. Now, Project Noah was actually the original, what do you call it? Like the secret title of the game, the tentative name of it while it was in
Oh, I didn't know that.
production. It was tentatively, or what do you call that? It's like Near was called Project Near.
The placeholder.
It was like a placeholder name until they come up with something else, but then they just went with Near.
I can't remember.
Anyways, I can't remember code name I think might be
Yeah.
it. But Project Noah was the original code name for the game.
Interesting.
He says, may all your worries cease, rest in peace, ancestors of mortal man. Now it is just you and I, Sophia. So, now let's break down this anima animus persona thing real quick. Deus is the name of this massive weapon system
Yeah.
that was used by the civilization, and this is explained by Ellie Miang a little later when they merge into one person. But we'll start here because it's kind of hard to break down what they mean in some of these earlier scenes without knowing some of this. The Deus system was the name of the weapon system that the Eldridge ship was carrying inside of it. It had been decommissioned because it was so powerful and it was autonomous. It had an AI that they were like, we can totally lose control of this thing.
Yeah.
So it was a weapon system that had destroyed an entire planet
Yeah.
on its own, by itself. And they were like, we should probably not use this. This is way too powerful. Okay. The Deus system has as its energy source something called the Zohar modifier. It's like a monolithic slab with a big eye on it. And so that's the energy source. We'll talk way more about that later. But within that eye was a computer, a biological computer, which served as like the brain of Deus. And it's called the Kadamony.
Right.
So, and we'll get more into the Kadamony later as well. Fei and Citan and Bart go up and like see it at the end of this play session we did, and they're looking at it, and the original mother's like decomposed body is still in there. There's all kinds of crazy stuff with that. But the Kadamony
that was cool.
is a biological supercomputer that served as like the brain of Deus, right? And it was plugged straight into that Zohar modifier where it got the energy from. Now, the Kadamony is made up of 3 components. So, they're living components. These are the biological portions of this supercomputer. The anima, the animus, and the persona.
Hi, everybody. I'm recording this after the podcast to just simplify this section of explaining what the persona, anima, and animus are. Got a little bit too much into the weeds. I think I did, let's just say I complicated it more than I should have. Here's a really great explanation on the wiki. The biological portion of Kadamony's interior is sectioned into 3 parts, the persona, anima, and animus. All 3 of these are needed for Deus to be able to use Kadamony to use the Zohar's power. So, very simply, these 3 portions, the persona, anima, animus, are the biological pieces of the Kadamony's computer, right? The anima refers to the anima relics, which were scattered across the world from the Eldridge crash. So, we know what those are. They power our Omnigears when paired, right? The animus was used by the mother of humanity to create the first humans, the first being the 12 members of the Gazel ministry who were charged with looking for the anima relics, as well as Cain, who was charged as their leader. They would go on to mass produce more humans using Kadamony. So the animus portion of the Kadamony was used for the creation of human beings. And the mother of humanity was the one who did that. She took the animus from the Kadamony and created human beings with them. The persona is tied into the creation of the original Elheim, and is why, on the day of resurrection, Ellie is fated to awaken as the last incarnation of Mia and merge with Deus. Now, for further clarification on this point, it is interesting to note that in Xenogears' Perfect Works, there's an excerpt that says, like MAM, and that's an acronym, MAM, standing for Magnetic Abnormal Matter. It's basically the element that makes up the Zohar, which has been a mystery to humanity ever since discovering it. So, like MAM, the origin and nature of persona, the central element of Kadamony, remain unclear. So, the game never really specifies what specifically the persona is, but it is, from what information we do get, it's one of 3 pieces that are a biological part of the Kadamony. It's just that persona itself is an element that is mysterious. We don't know precisely what it is. But it's from that the original mother came, and then the original mother used animus to create humans in order to go out and search for the anima relics, which were lost in the crash, in order to retrieve them and bring everything back into the Kadamony to be restored, then put back into the Zohar, then reconstruct the Deo system and go back to the stars. That's kind of the plan here. The plan is to use the material in the Kadamony, which was Animus, to create humans to go find the Anima relics, bring them back, and put everything back together and go back to space. That's what they're trying to achieve.
The Kadamony created a mother, that woman from the opening cutscene with the purple hair. It like constructed a person with like life. It's like artificial life, but it's also organic. It's indistinguishable from a human being because it is organic material. It's It's living organic material. And the anima and the animus and the persona are all the parts in this Kadamony that give it this ability to do this. Does that make sense?
That does, actually. It actually sounds quite a bit like, what'd you call it? Like a path of least resistance. Like something crashes and it, like what the Ian Malcolm explanation of life will find a way.
Yes.
Like God, everything is just hopeless. The pieces have fallen. It's completely crashed. But it's like there is a way, and all I have is time.
Yes.
And so let's just get this process started, and eventually it'll all come back to me.
Yes.
And we can just keep going. And the 10,000 years will be a blip in the existence of an infinite being, right?
Yes.
Yes. So that actually does make sense.
Okay. That's what it's all about.
Now, the technical how is impossible, but
Who cares?
the theoretical, philosophical, I get it,
Okay. So then we get a scene with Wiseman. He's trying to like help Fei out. He's like, Fei's all depressed because he couldn't protect Ellie, couldn't save her, she got captured. And he basically goes through a little speech where he's like, the reason why you couldn't defeat Grahf is because you're not in the right place emotionally. Like Grahf really draws his strength from his hatred and his deep. Yeah. It's a very Star Wars
emotions.
thing.
Yes, very
Darth
much
Vader's power comes from his hate and anger and all that.
And he needs to use his
There's
love.
actually a lot of parallels with Grahf and Darth Vader and Star Wars there. We'll get into more of that in a minute because he's Fei's father.
He's our father.
Anyways, but he's basically saying Ellie was able to do what she did because of her deep love and like all these emotions.
Yeah.
She's able to harness like the power of her feelings and emotions, and that gives her the strength to do what she did. You are not doing that. You need to harness the power and the strength of your emotions, which is something that Fei has not been willing to do because that draws id out.
Because id shows up, It's tiring for him.
Control
right?
his emotions.
When he gets emotional, he gets tired and he gets exhausted. He retreats, and id then takes advantage of that.
Right. So he needs to more or less get control of this because he needs his emotions and his feelings to give him like the strength to do what he needs to do. But he also needs to not let Fei or let id take over by doing that. He needs to become one whole person.
Right.
This is more or less what Wiseman is hinting at in the scene. So then he takes off and he's like, all right, they're going to go out and look for Ellie. They go out for 2 weeks trying to find her, and what they find is that Krelian is constructing his ark, which is called Merkava. It's this like giant pyramid-like structure.
Yes.
Now, Merkava is a bad transliteration for Merkaba, which is Hebrew for the chariot of God, like the throne of God on the chariot.
Nice.
That's what that means. So the Merkava is the chariot of God that's going to go back up to the stars. The Dea system is contained inside of it.
Yeah.
He's reconstructing God inside of the Merkava, and he's going to take off back into the stars with it. That's what that is all about. I think what he says in this little narration here is, using the data obtained from Raziel and his own nanomachine technology, Krelian had begun the construction of God's Ark, Merkava. Its completion was imminent. To prevent its activation and to rescue Ellie, we headed to Merkava. Now, I don't believe that he built that entire thing
I don't
in 2
either.
weeks.
I figured that he found it.
Yes. I think
Right?
I think this is confirmed by some of the scenes from 500 years ago when Sophia sacrifices herself and kamikazes into that structure.
Oh, yeah.
I believe that was the Merkava
was
of
it?
that time, which was damaged
So he just needed
by
to fix it
her self-sacrifice.
Yeah.
I think he just kind of it reemerged and he sort of like finished its construction.
Yeah, well, it had to have reemerged previous to the past 2.
Yeah, or maybe
Weeks.
some of the excavations that were being done.
Well, there was a
found it
room
or
there
something.
that sure looked a lot like the Ramsus test tube experiments room.
Yeah,
And the room where Karen.
that's true. So he
with
was
Fei.
probably in Merkava
Yeah.
at that time.
So it was
Yeah.
it wasn't, I guess, functional, but it was that same area. So it's been around. He's known about it for a while. He's used
Yeah.
it. He's probably been trying to fix it up,
Yeah.
but he only really made a breakthrough recently.
Working on it over
Yeah.
the 500 years. Now
Yeah.
its construction is imminent. Its completion is imminent, right?
Yep.
So you meet the Element girls outside of Merkava. They're there to try to help Ramsus, who's
Yes.
totally lost it.
Yeah.
We're there to
I
help
liked
Ellie.
this scene. This was nice.
Yeah, we're there to help Ellie. They're like, don't get the wrong idea. Like, we're not gonna help you, but it's like, but our goals are we have the same enemy, which is
Yeah.
Krelian and Miang.
Yes.
We both hate them because they have the person we care about.
Yeah.
So let's have a truce and not fight each other while we go in and try to help the people we care about. Right. That's
Yep.
kind of what happens there. And Fei kind of does his like, look, if it gets too intense, just run away. Like, don't try to like,
Yeah.
we'll take care of it. And she's like offended by that. Like, wow, we'll show you. We'll make you
Yes.
eat those words.
Yeah.
We're capable. Like, screw you.
Yeah.
Right. So you all go in, and
But everyone goes in kind of like in different.
different
places,
ways.
yeah.
Yeah. You're kind of descending here through a giant symbol of the angel statues.
Yes,
and
it
kinda
almost looks
falling
like a
down.
hologram. It looks
Yeah,
like a
it's
digital
like
symbol,
transparency.
but it's missing something.
Uh,
I took this note here. It's
What did-
missing the fire. It's missing the
Oh,
light.
the fire in the
between
center.
the two. But as we descend in between them, we are the
fire.
that the igniting
The
force,
energy.
the energy between the two that makes it possible, right?
Yeah.
That would be us. That represents that, and that's why that shot's so long. Because I was like, why in the world is this shot so long? They're like, they're trying to tell me something,
Yeah.
and I believe that was it. As we pass right in between them.
Yeah, I was like artistically, I feel like I understand the use of the symbol here,
Yeah.
and just the symbol's like recurrence in the game generally. I think it's
Sure.
an important symbol.
Yeah.
I from like a practical standpoint, I have a little bit of confusion if Krelian is constructing this Merkava, why he would put that symbol in the ship, because I feel like he lost his faith in the
Yes.
Nissan religion
Yes.
when Sophia died.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that in a minute because there's a big cutscene about that.
And he feels like he needs to do what he needs to do
He needs
without
to
Sophia.
he, like,
he needs
loses-
to carry on alone.
Yeah,
right?
he loses his faith in that god.
Yeah.
And he goes out to make his own god. And so
By himself.
I just wondered why that symbol would appear in the Merkava,
Yeah.
which Krelian is constructing. I wonder what his purpose was in doing that.
I would
Just from a
only,
practical
I would
standpoint.
only say that the fire being gone is important.
Sure.
Because the fire represented some type of divine intervention
Yeah.
of sorts that enabled the two. Because they're not touching; they're almost touching. It's like the Michelangelo Sistine Chapel thing. They're almost touching, but not quite. And that energy in between them is what enables them to truly come together and become more, right? And Ramsus has this image of them almost touching without that in between, and that he believes that God is unnecessary for humans to come together to achieve whatever they need to do. That would be my interpretation of that.
Okay.
Just right there. Just
Yeah, and I think artistically that's like
I did think about that.
a fine reason to like include the symbol. It's just from like a more of like the logical,
psychology.
practical. I wonder why Krelian would include that symbol in the ship,
Because
unless
he's not
he's
too
maintaining.
attached to any other person.
He's
Right?
trying to maintain some remnant of Sophia or something like as
Yeah.
a motivator for him to, because he does want Sophia to guide him. He says that at the end of the scene where he loses all his
Yeah.
faith. Sophia, guide me as I go on this new path to like create God.
Right. That's
Maybe
true.
it's something to do with that, but anyways,
And
I don't know why he would do that.
when things happen towards the end of this, he is more or less beholden to this woman now.
Yeah,
This Miang type that shows up.
right. So anyways, you keep going in and you fight Ramsus here. And he starts to explain a lot more about his background. You see a scene where he's in like a nano reactor tube, as like an embryonic life form. And I think it's really interesting that each time they've shown this, it doesn't look anything like a human. Like in the embryo form,
that's
Ramsus looks nothing like a human fetus or something like that, right? It looks like something totally weird, which I think is interesting because I think Krelian says he's not even human at some point here in a minute. Like, as they're like talking down to him and trying to incite him to kill Miang, like, I think he says something about you're not even human or something like that. So maybe that's like a way of like representing his lack of like true humanity or something. But in the scene you have Krelian and Miang looking into this nanoreactor tube thing. And Krelian kind of describing how this was meant to be an artificial contact. But then this woman in blue, who we did see a little bit earlier, last time Ramsus was talking about his background, right? Comes walking in. And Krelian says, this time your body is young. And Miang, who is taking control of this woman, Karen, says the previous one got too old. I'm not quite sure. There's one detail I'm a little hazy about, which is like Miang later, when she gets cut down by Ramsus, says it's in my nature that I can't kill myself. So I wonder if
I thought that was the nanomachine thing.
Because, well,
no, you might be
let me
right.
bring up the actual line.
So she can't kill herself, but she also can't just, her spirit can't just hop. She has to actually die.
Yeah, she says, good, this is how I wanted it, Car. I am fated so as not to be able to kill myself.
So her previous body just died of old age.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Just got like 90 years old.
Is like, she just had to stay in that body until it died.
All the way.
And then she could take a new body?
Interesting.
Anyways.
Interesting.
I'm not sure what the rules are around that.
I don't know if it's she physically can't kill herself, but that, like you mentioned, the protocol of the goddess that's in her is like, you can't do this. You can't.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
It's like part of the program.
The programming, you can't kill yourself.
We'll get into that more in a second, too. Like the difference between Miang and Ellie, right? But anyways, I think what this is signifying is that she has to stay in a body until it dies before she can jump into a new one. And I believe that Ellie, when she merges with Miang later, says something about it being like there's like a probability element to that. So maybe she doesn't even like necessarily choose specifically who she's going to be next. It's just she's going to awake in someone.
Somebody.
Any woman, but someone.
Because all the women have the potential for her to awaken in them, right?
Yes.
So
all women.
And I do wonder how it chooses. It's got to be something along the lines of who has a greater resonance towards it or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because she goes right into Ellie.
Yeah.
And it's like it's not like she went to some other random person. It was clear that Ellie is the prime person to go to. Or it could have just been proximity-wise. She's the closest.
Maybe.
Girl.
Or maybe there's something in terms of like the fate of all of this, right? To where when the time is right, they need to be put back into one again. Like the two of them need to merge back into one again. I don't know. But in any case, the old body that Miang had inhabited died and got too old. Right. And so now she's inhabiting this body of Karen, who was Fei's mother. I really like the reveal there. It's pretty sinister. She says, individual names have no meaning to me. She's saying that the new body is Karen. Is that thing inside the nanoreactor there the one? And then Krelian says, the Emperor's been told it's a prototype for an artificial contact. So Krelian was actually making clones of the Emperor because he needed someone to kill the Emperor. That's what Cain was made for. But maybe secondarily, part of his purpose was to be this artificial contact to make contact with the Zohar.
How was he going to do that?
I don't know.
How do you make an artificial? How is that even possible?
They don't really explain
what
the science was behind that or why they felt like he might be able to do it. But they, I guess, had probably been waiting for close to 500 years now.
Yes,
for a contact to emerge, and they just.
Is it in part because Grahf stuck around so long that because you would think that the reincarnation idea being that somebody dies, you really have to wait a while for them to be reborn, or
Yes.
it's not immediate once they die.
I
they're
don't think
reborn.
there's any kind of pattern necessarily to predict
It just
where or
shows up.
when a contact will be
Okay.
reincarnated again.
Okay.
Because you have Abel, the original, which was 10,000 years ago.
Right.
Then you have Kim, which was
I
4,000
assumed
years ago.
that they had kids and passed down the contact gene.
In every generation.
I assumed that.
Now,
And
I
that these
don't-
are just the stories we're focusing on, and the other ones didn't do anything.
I don't think that's the case. I may be wrong, but I don't think that's the case. I think that the contact is only reincarnated in Abel, from Abel to Kim to Lacan to Fei.
Okay.
So just the 3 reincarnations.
Just looking at that, you could say that it's getting more frequent, right? Because it was
Yeah,
6,000 from
6,000,
Abel to Kim,
and then
but then
3,500,
and then just
and then
500.
500.
And so I get it. It came down to this. If it didn't work for Faye, I don't know that it ever would have happened. But you could assume that it would have only been 20 years for the next contact. You know?
The other element to this is that the time of the gospel is really close.
Yeah.
And they're
it's like
starting to,
they need
maybe we won't get a contact in time.
Well, right. And so they're desperate. So they're
So
like,
they're
maybe
trying to
we
make
can
an
one.
artificial contact.
Yeah. I also think that nature would be sensing the time of the gospel is getting near, because does time of the gospel have anything to do with this general protocol and Deus and all of that?
So,
Or is it artificially by Cain saying, hey?
No. This is like a biological time limit.
Okay. So if the contact is starting to be born more and more frequently, that would posit the idea that the powers that be also feel that time is getting closer, right?
yeah.
Like everything's
We're
compressing.
getting down to the wire.
We're starting to, okay, now it's limit 500. Let's get another one going. Let's do this.
Yeah. Not sure what the rules are around that, but I believe, it was like they had no idea when the next contact would be
Right.
born, and so they were trying to create an artificial contact.
Okay.
But then Miang happens to embody Karen, who is the mother of the contact.
And that's just chance,
Very
right?
fortunate circumstances for
Right.
Miang's
or
purposes.
Providence, destiny stuff.
Sure.
Okay.
So Krelian says the Emperor's been told it's a prototype for an artificial contact. Miang says it's moving. Can it hear us? This is really interesting to me. She wants to make sure first that the thing is understanding what they're saying. This is the cruelty of Miang. And Krelian says, yes, it already has a will of its own. And then she says, then I have a better way. Let's dispose of it. We don't need this. We have my child. My child will be 4 this year. I checked it out. There's no mistake. It's a contact. She didn't come out with this information until she
knew.
confirmed that the embryo could hear that they were going to discard it in place of a real contact.
Right.
Then she decided to say it, which I thought was especially cruel.
I mean, could that have something to do with this plan she's putting into place? Like, hey, I'm going to get close to this guy later on.
Possibly, yes.
And he will hate my guts and he will kill me, and that's what I want.
Yes.
Right? I mean,
All part of a plan.
Yeah.
Like all looking forward. How
Right.
can I manipulate this? How can I use this
yes.
to my advantage
Use his
later?
hate, so make him full of resentment. Make him,
Yeah.
so she forced that on him. That's
Yes.
crazy, knowingly. That's
She
wild.
and that's what I thought was so interesting is that she checked first to make
Yeah.
sure, and then went through all of this. And then Krelian says, "What's the name of your child?" She says, "My child's name is Fei," and that's like the big reveal. Like, oh my gosh, Fei's mother was Miang all the time.
Yeah.
So you know what this means? Krelian says a corresponding antitype is, and she says, yes, probably already born somewhere. So seemingly, when the contactors are born, the
that's
antitype
right.
is also born.
That's it. Okay. No, that makes sense.
So they're
because
like-
Miang is continuous, but Ellie and Fei are just happen to be
These huge gaps in between
Yeah.
their reincarnations.
Okay.
So
That makes sense.
they know that an antitype and contact are out there somewhere, and the time of the gospel is really close.
Okay.
So we see all of that in like the flashback for Ramsus there. And then the element girls come in and they try to talk some sense into Ramsus. They're like, no, we're not opposing you. We're not trying to censor you. We're not betraying you.
Yeah.
We're trying to help you. We're trying to do what's in your best interest. And he doesn't listen to them. He just wants to kill Fei so bad. And so you end up fighting him and beating him.
We knock him through a wall.
And he's kind of like laying there on the ground.
Yeah.
By the way, his new gear, this is not the same one as before.
I don't recognize the gears. I
Yeah.
really don't.
He
I
had
have
like-
a hard time recognizing
He had
the
like a
gears.
golden one before.
Well, I get the color. Yeah, it was like a yellowish golden.
And
yeah.
I'm guessing Fei in his system id knew Veltal just like destroyed it or something last time they fought.
Oof.
And now he's in this like
Well, but
really
he had
weird
the
one.
Omni gear that he fought us in the sky.
Yeah.
Right? And he threw
And
us
I
down.
think that's the one that Fei like destroyed when they fought
that's the
again.
one. Oh, okay. Mm.
Because he beat Fei up. And
Yes,
you
and
go
then
down
in the
to
forest
Melchior,
we killed him again.
And then
That
and
makes
then
sense.
Melchior enhanced the Veltal with the system id
and then
mode,
we quickly-
and then we beat him up then. And
so now
that
he
gear
keeps having to get new
is
gears.
gone. I'm guessing Fei
Yeah.
went overboard and like trashed that one too bad. And now he's in this really freaking dumb looking one. It's like a purple thing with like
Other than color.
two sets of arms and they're like doing this.
Yes, he's just sitting there punching his own
Punching his
fists.
fist, yeah.
I'm gonna get you.
It's really weird looking.
Yeah, that was great.
Anyways.
Oh, color I get, but everything else, like how many wings they have and how many
Yeah.
spikes they have and which
It's,
weapon they're using.
it's PS1 graphics.
It's difficult to tell. Yeah, difficult to tell.
Anyways, you go further in and my goodness, what a scene you get here.
Yeah, this is pretty wild.
Okay, so
So we go past the Ramsus test tube.
yeah, and you come into essentially where the body of the Dea system is being kind of like,
Yeah,
it's like
in
a
this,
big dome
Yeah.
with eyes on it. It's being sort of reconstructed there. Ellie is again she's hung on a cross. She's being like crucified there. They're talking about how her sacrifice and melding again with Deus is like part of the time of the gospel resurrection stuff. She needs to
Yeah.
like become one with it again. And we sort of confront them. This is where you fight Miang and her Omni gear, which is the one we saw in Solaris while we were kind of going with Citan, like down into like the bowels. Where
Oh, the one that was underwater
Yeah.
or something? Yeah, that was
that
crazy.
gear is this one that
Yeah.
Miang uses to fight us.
Yeah.
And even if you win the fight, she just gets back up and be like, haha, like you can't defeat
kill
me,
me,
I have
yeah.
nanomachines. And
Yeah, we can't kill her.
so you can't win because nanomachines, son. Have you seen that clip? It's from Metal Gear Rising. Do you never played Metal Gear Rising?
I've only played one Metal Gear game.
Okay, hold on. I just gotta show you this because that's funny.
Why won't you die? Nanomachine, son.
Why won't you die? Nanomachine, son.
That's great.
It's awesome. We should cover that game at some point on the podcast. That'd be a freaking roller coaster.
Well, I've heard just in terms of deep games that are philosophically based, Metal Gear is
Metal Gear as a
among
series
those.
would be awesome.
Yeah.
Metal Gear Rising
Just that one?
is the silliest freaking game of all time. It's the dumbest thing ever, but
though,
it's really
I'm,
fun.
I'm kind of up for a silly game after Xenogears. Like a really just fun, silly, mindless game.
So anyways, you can't kill her because Nanomachine, son. So, okay, let's take a look at some dialogue here.
Okay.
They start to feel like, the party starts to feel like they're being like sucked in or something, like something's
Yeah.
like torn apart from the inside.
Yeah, well, one of them says that. What is it?
I feel like I'm being
It's
torn
either
apart.
Bart or,
Billy
yeah,
or
somebody's
somebody.
just like, yeah, Billy. Like, it's tearing me apart.
And what's happening is that the anima relics are being torn from their gears and like combining back into Deus again.
Yeah.
So they wanted to bring all of them there. They baited them in so they could take the anima relics back.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why they did all this. This is why Miang, and I should clarify, Krelian and Miang baited them all in here so that they could obtain all the anima relics again. They already have those that the ministry had obtained earlier, but the ones that are paired with our gears had to be gotten back as well. So our gears are separated from their anima relics, and now they're just normal gears again. Now, the way that it shows the gears themselves being sucked in, but that's not what's happening. It's because you see the characters in their gears later. They still have their gear.
Yeah, but it's like the spirit of the gear.
It's
that goes
just
in.
the anima relic.
You know, when we were going through, not that long ago, just going through place to place, getting the new anima relics within the gears all around, right? Like in the different areas, whatever. It was like a little ghost hologram that would flicker on, and then it would disappear, and all of a sudden their gear, oh, my gear has this new thing now, right? But it was like a spirit kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
But that's what anima means. Anima means spirit, technically. So that's where this is going.
So Miang says, this is the true meaning of the anima relics, to attain their respective animus and return to the persona. I kind of explained that earlier, right? The anima relics are really one set of parts that made up Deus, in particular the Kadamony. They were the biological parts of the Kadamony. The physical manifestation of God. They regain their original powers or functions by aligning themselves with their destined partner, the animus. So the anima and the animus have to pair together within the Kadamony to work, right?
Yeah.
An Omni gear that has lost its respective anima relic is but a puppet. And then Krelian says, and this girl too was destined to become one with God. You see, Elheim is really one of the parts of God as well. Put simply, you served to help bring all the parts of God together here for me. You're a bunch of stupid fools, It's as if you're all clowns. Yeah, so considering that the Kadamony created the original mother, who is both Ellie and Miang, which we'll explain in a second, they also need to go recombine with the persona, and the persona with the anima and animus to complete the Kadamony, which then goes back in the Zohar, which then goes back in the Deus. Hopefully that makes sense at this point. I think I've explained it 3 times.
Gotcha.
Hopefully that sticks now. Miang then confirms that she and the Gazel ministry basically fabricated the legends of man's origins,
right?
And how the universe was created, and that story that was passed down.
But that was just a legend.
Just a legend. They made it up to control people. Ramsus then comes in, and he's like, what's my purpose? He's kind of almost like giving up on life at this point. He's just like forlorn and just like, please tell me I have a reason to exist.
Yeah.
Begging her, Miang. And she just continues to antagonize him.
I think I'm right about that. She's trying to get him to kill her.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Now,
this is the whole time.
The only thing about this that I think
was that.
The only thing that I think is kind of weird about this is I don't know why Krelian couldn't have just been the one to do it.
I know, that is a little strange.
Like, I don't know if she can't kill herself.
She wanted Ramsus to kill her. I wonder if she connected with him on some different
level. Now
of
here's
we aren't useful. Our use is to help something else, and that's not fun.
Here is where I do have one maybe thing that I think might be interesting to think about.
Okay.
So she baits him into killing her by being cruel to him.
But then what she says...
But then when she's actually dying, she says, good, this is how I wanted it, Kar. I am fated so as not be able to kill myself. Now all my wishes have come true, thanks to you. And I wonder how much of the original personality of the women that Miang takes over are still there. Like, they don't have control. They can't do anything about it. Like, Miang is in total control of them.
Completely.
But I wonder if they are totally melted.
Karen has a moment.
Yes.
She has a moment.
I think they're still there somehow.
I think you're right.
I think that, and think of how horrible that is. This woman who was taken over probably as a young girl, this current version of Miang.
Yeah.
Because it would have been after Karen died that she jumped probably into this body.
Yes.
And in somewhere in Solaris as a second-class citizen or something like that, and went up through the ranks of Gebler and whatever.
Yes.
This girl probably had to be witness to all the horrific stuff that she was being made to do by some being inside of her she had no control over.
That's probably true.
And had a relationship with Kar and saw all the manipulation of this man that I don't know how she felt, but this person might have felt about him, but she's probably witnessing all of this.
Yeah.
That's my theory. I think that these women are still
That makes
conscious.
sense. That
They're
makes
still
sense.
there. They're still witnessing it. They just have no control of what's
That's
happening.
crazy.
And what a horrible, horrible like fate,
Yeah.
right? To like have literally no control of anything and just have to watch all of this happen.
Yeah.
And I wonder if
think
in
that
the final
sounds, yeah.
moments, kind of similar to Karen, has she changed in those final moments?
Yeah.
If this is the girl kind of coming back out and saying like, I'm glad you were the one to end this for some reason. I don't know. Just something that I thought might.
Yeah. Well, that's very interesting. To what extent could Karen stepping in front of the energy be considered killing herself?
Killing her. Oh, good question.
And we'll get to that later, but there's
That's a great question.
when you say you can't kill yourself, but you can walk in front of a train, or you can walk
to
in
save
front of a
someone
bullet
else.
to save someone else.
That's a very good loophole I think you've discovered.
Well, no, but I
or plot hole, I mean.
maybe, but I do think it still has some relevance to the programming, which is the programming can't kill itself. But if the human wakes up for a brief moment, then whatever happens, happens.
Yeah,
but
maybe-
the programming is still limited in what it can
Was
do.
it Karen's love that like overcame Miang for a fraction of a second to dive in front of Fei?
And
or-
it wasn't Miang
Yeah, I don't know.
deciding to do that.
Yeah, I don't know. That would be
I don't
my
know.
that would be my like off the cuff explanation of that.
'Kay.
But I don't know what the rules are.
Fair enough. I don't.
All
I
the
don't either.
magic in this game
don't
is
either.
soft magic, and I have no idea how it works.
Yes.
Okay.
I like your theory, by the way. I like that. That would make add a layer of depth to this game if that were true.
Yeah, I really like also how after Ramsus like cuts her down and then runs over and cuts Krelian down
Yeah.
too, that he just turns and just goes to Miang's side and he just kind of like
Yep.
just like slumps over and he doesn't say anything or do anything for the rest of the scene.
Yeah.
He's just at Miang's side.
Yep.
So obviously he cared about her. He had a relationship with her and cared about her pretty deeply. He's very
Yeah.
affected by this.
Right.
And he's at his wit's end. He's like, I don't have a purpose anymore. I cannot kill Fei. The person I looked up to the most has just told me how useless my existence is after having killed Cain, which was what I was used to do.
Yes.
Now I have no purpose anymore, and he's just defeated. He's just
Yeah.
totally defeated at this
I
point.
actually really like that.
And he just doesn't care anymore
Yeah.
about what's happening around him. So then Faye goes up to try to get Ellie down from the cross. And as soon as that happens, she just turns and shoots him.
Yes, she shoots him.
Which is just like, you think like this has gone totally crazy, and then like another thing just happens. It's like, what?
I
what?
know.
What? It's just like
It
elevating,
just keeps
elevating.
getting crazier. I didn't know who she shot at first, because they show her gun and then.
And then she transforms. Her hair turns purple.
Yeah.
And this is Miang coming back and fusing together with Ellie,
Yeah.
awakening inside of Ellie. And so this is Miang Ellie, who was the original mother, the purple-haired woman
At the very
at the very beginning from the Eldritch Crash.
Yeah.
There was
So-
the two of them fused or whatever.
I remember
right?
when that happened. I was like, is this gonna be a femme fatale or like? Anyways, it ended up being all three. Basically, it ended up being the mother.
Oh right,
The
your
mother, the
predictions.
femme fatale, and the fun-loving child
All in
type.
one.
It was all of them.
I actually remember someone in the comments
Yeah.
being like, "Oh, Kaysen, why does it have to only be one?" In response to you from that video, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean,
'Cause it
typically
ends up being all of them.
you can combine in different, and everyone goes through those stages of their life. But yeah, I guess all three of them though.
All three.
Yeah, very
All
interesting.
three archetypes in one.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So she goes on to explain basically everything that happened with the Eldritch.
Okay, yeah.
I wrote the whole thing down just in case there were like elements of it. If a question gets brought up, I might have to like look up and
Okay.
see what she says. But I'm not going to read the whole thing.
Well,
I'm just going to try and
I didn't
summarize
take
it.
any notes during that part. It was just too long, too much info, and I didn't even know what to write down.
Yeah,
I just kept going.
the basic part of it is this, and I've
Like, I
already,
do
I've
understood
already
it,
kind of, I've already kind of said this,
Yeah.
but I'll say it again just for thoroughness, I
For
guess.
clarity.
The humans of the intro movie sequence are the far descendants of us, so like way in our future,
Right.
when we're colonizing the freaking galaxy, right? There was a war happening at that time, a galactic war. and a weapon, an autonomous, like, intelligent weapon with its own life. It's an artificial life. But it's made of both mechanical and biological parts. A weapon called Deus, a weapon system called Deus, was created as, I don't know, to be used in this war for whichever side to, like, subjugate the other. In a test run of this weapon, it destroys a planet. They did not mean to do that. They were testing it, and it destroyed a whole freaking planet. And they were like, oh crap, this is way too powerful. We got to decommission this thing. We got to get rid of it. So they broke it up. They actually, like, what's the word she used? Hold on, I want to make sure I get this right. It was dismantled. She says the creators of Deus found its immeasurable power to be too much of a threat and hence forcibly shut it down. In order to analyze the cause of the problem, the core was dismantled and placed on an interplanetary emigrant passenger ship to be transported to another planet. So
why'd they do that?
They dismantled it. They were going to analyze what went wrong.
But let's just say that the president that made the decision to put that bomb on that ship did not get reelected. But also, this brings up the question, are there still other human alien people out there?
Yeah, apparently there would be.
That's crazy.
There would be.
I assumed that all of humanity was contained on the Eldritch. And everyone, and this was it. And it was the Ark. It was like the savior of all the humans are dead.
Still out there.
Oh, that's crazy. That's actually really cool. And
who knows if who knows by this time? Because
right,
10,000 years later,
destroyed each other.
If they in that war they haven't destroyed themselves yet. We don't really know what the fate of that galactic spacefaring humanity is. Okay.
They could eventually rediscover the humans here being like, what the heck?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So anyways, they disassembled it and they're transporting it. This is where you get the opening scene where it's like Alpha 1 and Omega 1, because Alpha 1 was, I think, where the Kadamony was stored.
Oh, okay.
And Omega 1 was like another piece, right? So it was broken, dismantled, and like Alpha 1 and Omega 1 are like working together to try to like take over the ship and like reconstruct itself. So that's like what's happening in the opening cutscene is Deus is already working to like take over the Eldritch and reconstruct itself, and then it wants to go somewhere. It's trying to go to what they called
the main planet. I remember that, the main planet. Now I don't know what in the world that means, and did it get there?
That is explained in Perfect Works what the main planet is, so I'll wait until our final episode when we reach the Perfect Works.
Where they ended up is not the main planet. Okay, because it says they're going to the main planet, and then they crashed after the warp. I assumed they were there.
Deus is beginning to log in the coordinates to the main planet, and it's starting to compress space to go faster than light travel there. But they self-destruct before the ship actually jumps, and then it crashes on the planet nearby.
Okay.
But yeah, it was going to go to the main planet, and that's what they were like, that's unacceptable. Deus, this freaking ultra-powerful AI computer, nuclear destructive, planet-destroying weapon cannot go to the main planet, self-destruct.
Okay.
So that
clears up a lot.
The captain of the Eldritch
up a lot.
saved the main planet from Deus.
Nice.
By self-destructing the Eldritch.
Great bravery.
Good job by him. Okay. And so as it's crashing, Deus knows that it needs to eject its brain, the Kadamony, for a soft landing, if it has any chance of reconstructing itself. So it separates the Kadamony from the Zohar, and it has a soft landing on that little cliff face where we find it later.
Yeah.
And then its protocol creates these human beings that it genetically makes from the material of the Kadamony, the animus, to go out, gather its parts back together, reconstruct it, and then go back to the main planet.
Gotcha.
That's its goal.
You might have to say that one more time before this podcast is over.
Is that the fourth time?
That was the fourth time. Okay.
So it's attached to the Kadamony from the Zohar, she says. And then she explains that the Zohar is what drives all of the gears on their planet. It's also all their ether energy, too.
Yes. One of the things I think Citan says later on, he says, once we destroy it, we no longer can use magic in our gears. Nothing will work anymore.
Because the Zohar is like the
Yeah.
power source for freaking everything.
Everything.
On this planet.
Yeah, very interesting.
So, so they explain that. Now, I might want to get into a little bit of what the Zohar is a reference to, real quick.
Sure.
So, the Zohar in this game is an infinite energy engine that powers Deus, and all their gears and all their ether and everything. But what it is a reference to is like a foundational work of literature on like Kabbalistic Jewish mystical thought. It's like a commentary on some of the mystical aspects of the Torah. But so you have like the Torah itself, but then there's this idea of something called an oral Torah, which is like some of the more secret parts of like the mysteries of God that were handed down by the prophets. And I think the Zohar is meant to like reveal some of those things, a record of some of those oral truths, some of those oral, that oral Torah, right? So it's meant to have been like compiled by, what's the guy's name? So it first appeared in Spain, which was in the Kingdom of Leon in the 13th century. There was a Jewish writer named Moses de Leon who ascribed the work to this guy, Shimon bar Rochai, which was a person a long time ago, like a rabbi from forever
he
ago.
claimed he just translated it. Right?
Yeah, or compiled the material.
Or the material far predates that, but I don't think we have the original stuff. So I don't know if that's verifiable.
Of course.
But that's what he said.
There's also people who dispute that and say that Leon himself was the author of the
exactly,
Zohar.
because we don't have the original text of the Zohar.
Right. Because apparently
have
it was,
his compilation.
a lot of it was oral tradition anyway.
Right, sure, yeah. Fair enough.
Anyways, that's what the Zohar is in real life. It's this book that is a commentary on the deeper meanings of the Torah, some of the oral secrets, the oral Torah, and some of the more like mystical aspects of the secrets of God or something like that. Has nothing to do really with what the Zohar is in Xenogears, except for the fact that
I didn't
the
see
Zohar
a connection.
contains the wave existence. So like the secrets of God are contained in the Zohar.
As if it was a book, and it's kind of rectangular shaped.
Maybe that's like the connection, or why they decided to call it that. But
Okay.
what else does she go on to explain? This part really tripped me up. This took me a while, and talking to Pat Holloman a little bit, who's going to be on our podcast on the final episode.
Oh, cool.
To like get a sense of this, because I feel this is really, really badly explained here by Ellie Miang.
Oh, yeah.
She says, I'll just kind of go back a little bit. It wasn't just to restore its old body, because I think Citan says something like, all the people in the world were created solely to resurrect Deus. So she's explaining how all the humans are meant to be used as biological pieces to repair Deus. Right? So like, they're all being gathered together, and their genetic material is going to be like combined back to fix this Deus system and go back to the stars again. And so Citan's like, what the fetch? Like, all the people on Earth are meant to be used as replacement parts for Deus? That's crazy. And she's like, yes, but it wasn't just to restore its old body. More than half of Deus is constructed of biological parts. Do you remember those mutated humans, the Wells? Those are all people who were destined to become replacement parts for Deus. Almost all the people are destined to become parts for Deus. But you people gathered here are different. You could say you escaped that destiny by existing through multiple generations. I was really confused by this because I knew only Fei and Ellie were reincarnating.
But this
and
is
Miang,
everybody.
technically. But she's saying you escaped that destiny. I thought she was
that's
talking to
factor,
the whole party.
The animus factor, right?
Yes. So this is more or less what I think is happening here. When they use the geisha key, All of the humans on the planet were
except
supposed
for us.
to become wells.
Oh, okay. Right.
But there was actually a portion of people that didn't transform at all.
Yeah.
And in particular,
haves.
us, the haves,
Yeah.
versus the have-nots. And there was like a sliding scale. Some people like sort of transformed, but not all the way. What was supposed to happen was every freaking person was supposed to become a well. Only the people with the animus factor, which was meant to be Cain and the Gazel ministry,
Right.
were not supposed to transform. However, as Krelian was explaining earlier, part of their genes got scattered.
Oh, so a lot of people have.
So a lot of people have this animus factor, and it was because of that that they didn't transform. I believe is what she's saying. That when she's saying you escaped that destiny, I think it's a more general you, as in like you, the people who didn't transform into wells. All of you, all of mankind that did not, survived through the generations, meaning your genes. Despite all of the
Right.
genetic engineering that Krelian and Miang did, they could not prevent because of the wave existence and what it gave to Ellie. Some of the genetic factor that has that animus factor in it, right, got spread into this current generation of humans. So what she's saying here is that there aren't enough biological parts due to this for Deus to resurrect itself because so many people did
Yes.
not transform into wells.
Yeah, there's not enough.
There's not enough parts because of it.
Yes, I do
So
remember that.
Krelian had to make up for that. She says Krelian compensated for what was lacking with his nanomachines.
Okay. That does make sense to me.
Yes.
That does, the way you explained it.
Yes. The way they said it makes no sense at all.
No. Because it was like two sentences. They have such complex, like it was difficult enough for them to just convey this just in normal parlance, but they
Yes.
had to put it into like 3 sentences and then move on so that kids wouldn't get bored. And so it's like, this is how they summed it up. And okay, fair enough. If you're going to do it that quick, I don't know that it's possible. I also don't know that it should be done if it needs to be done that quick.
Yeah.
But it's just the time constraint that just like forced them into this corner where they only have 3 sentences to explain this crazy concept. You know what though? There is a religious, religious doctrine behind the idea of everybody kind of becoming God again. This is something I think the Catholic and Orthodox churches would teach. Is there's different doctrines of theosis, right?
Yes.
There's the theosis that is believed amongst certain Christians is that your spirits go raise up to heaven and then are absorbed back into God,
yes.
right? And that's a teaching amongst a lot of the current Christians.
It's in Jewish mystical traditions too.
Okay,
with joining back with the Ein Sof, which is like what God was before he became the God we know, right? The original
Yes.
Ein Sof, unknowable being.
Yes,
and
that's
Gnosticism.
beyond time. That actually comes from Egypt. There's
Gnosticism-
the God above gods that's outside of time,
Right.
which is like, because there needs to be one, so there is one, and
And-
then it. Anyways, yeah. I get you.
And then Gnostic teachings had a similar doctrine of the monad, right? Being like and so when people die, their spirits go back. The light of the monad, which is what gives us our life or whatever, goes back and rejoins with the monad again.
Yes.
And this is
And that's a type of theosis, right?
Yes.
A type of becoming God, right?
Yes.
And in some ways, it's like the at the very beginning of this game, the "you shall be as gods" kind of thing is like, well, if you are part of God, are you not akin to God in some way? You're a part of Him. You are as God,
right.
because you are a part of God. Anyways,
Right.
it's just a different fulfilling of that type of idea done in Xenogears, and a creative one. I actually kind of like it.
Yeah, and the interesting part of it is that this was kind of used both in this game and in Final Fantasy VII. Because in Final Fantasy VII, it's the Genova reunion.
The reunion,
is the same concept
And
where all the
they-
people with Genova cells are coming back
And they all
to rejoin
reassemble.
as Genova again.
Yeah,
right?
yep,
So that
that's
concept
true,
is
that's
there
true.
as well.
Yeah,
But here,
that's
it's like there's two
And
elements
Genova
to
is
it.
also Jehovah.
Yes.
Anyways, okay.
But here, there's kind of two parts of it. It's like Krelian and the villains don't understand that Deus is a demiurge. It's not the real God. So they're
Right.
trying to merge back with Deus. But like the purer doctrine is the wave existence.
Yes,
Is
that there
like
is
the
a
monad
separate,
of this
more abstract
universe.
Yeah.
and it's contact with that you
Yeah.
really want, not with Deus, which is this corrupted demiurge.
Well,
It's a
artificial
crappy
creation.
god.
Yeah, it's an artificial imitation. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like it's a corrupt, imperfect, like incomplete god.
Right.
And what's interesting, also another element to this is that I think what people were meant to transform into, they turned into wells, these awful, like zombie monster things.
Yeah.
What they were meant to become was the seraph angels.
Okay, and we see
That-
those a little later.
Only Krelian's genius with his nanomachines could make the wells then transform into what they're supposed to be, which is the seraph angels that go around with the Merkava destroying everybody.
Oh.
So Krelian makes up
I'm a little-
for Deus's
Lack.
insufficiency
In
as a
multiple-
god,
in multiple ways.
as a demiurge who is
Yeah.
not good at what he's supposed to do, who could not actually create the seraph angels it wanted or needed. It actually made wells which were useless.
Yes.
And Krelian had to step in with the nanotechnology to
Yes.
like transform them into what they're meant to be.
So, yeah, Krelian worships / is at the mercy of an incomplete god.
Well,
that-
his whole goal,
that's one-winged angel stuff right there.
yeah, his whole
Honestly.
goal is to create God himself.
Yes.
And this is
And that he does
the
mention that in the
existing-
previous.
thing in the world in which he could then, okay, I need to like step in and like help God reform itself, and then I'll join with it.
Sure.
Is like his whole motive
His,
of the game.
his hubris.
This is what he's trying to do, right?
Yes. Okay, that's interesting.
So God, Deus, the demiurge, was not even capable of fulfilling its own plan because it's a corrupted god. It's not.
Sure.
It's not.
It's
It's
not
not a monad. It's not a
pure,
wave
yeah.
existence. It's incomplete.
It's a
It
science
thinks it knows what it's doing,
experiment.
but it sucks. And Krelian had to help it.
It'll get there eventually.
Yeah.
Wow,
So-
that's crazy. That's crazy. Wow.
Anyways, kind of a lot going on there.
Yeah, dude, I didn't get that from.
Yeah, because it's not that well explained in the game itself. I wrote this down to Miang says, I am Miang, the keeper of time, the representative of our God, Deus. I was born to guide the people toward the path of the resurrection of Deus. So that's Miang's whole programming. I think it's
did a good job with
probably effective to think of Miang more like a program
That
than
has
like
a specific
person.
directive, right?
Yes.
Like, and it can't deviate.
All the women
Yeah.
in the world can be taken over by this protocol and will then move toward the goal of resurrecting Deus and guiding humanity to that point. So
I have a quick question.
Miang came from the Kadamony, right? The brain of Deus. It's almost like Deus' personality in a way.
We talk about Cain and the Gazel, and then Abel and the mother goddess, right?
Yes.
And the mother goddess is the only female person amongst that group. Is that true or no?
I mean,
Would
the
some of the
original
Gazel
people?
be?
No, they're all, I would think
They're all
because they're all
men.
animus. Yeah, they're all men.
And as far as the descendants of all humanity, I actually had assumed that it was Abel was the father of all of humanity and not the Gazel, because Abel paired with the mother and they procreated and had kids. That is what I got from it.
So no, but this actually
Okay.
brings up.
Well, then did all of the Gazel? Was this just a polygynous kind of?
It does say
Relationship.
that. I think it does directly mention that that the Gazel procreated, but I don't know if they procreated with the mother. I don't think that's the
Were
case.
there other things that were magically created using the morpho thing? Because
So
there would
I
have
forgot,
to be.
I forgot to explain what Kadamony is a reference to.
oh, okay.
So Kadamony, the etymology of Kadamony, right? So it's a misspelling. It shouldn't be with a Y. It should be with an I on the end.
Okay.
It's a reference to Ha-Adam Ha-Kadamony, the first human.
Oh yeah,
with
'cause
Kadamony
Adam-
meaning primordial, right? So
Yes.
so Adam Kadmon means primal man.
Adam means man or mankind.
Yeah, so thus, Kadamony can be seen as
Was the
symbolizing
first.
a substitute of the role of Adam from the Bible.
Yes.
So it's like
Okay.
the Kadamony with the mother together created the Gazel ministry.
So not just with the mother. Okay, well that makes sense.
So the mother,
So
who was
could
Miang,
have
Eliam,
created many
Eliam.
women as well, and
Well,
you
that's
don't know.
eventually what happened was when that original mother goes back into the plant, you kind of see her remains in there,
Yes, yeah.
which we'll talk about in a little later.
Yeah.
She created, I think they actually say it in the dialogue, so I probably have it written in one of the notes. She created two kind of clones of herself. And
Yeah,
one
Ellie,
was Ellie and one was
That's right,
Miang.
and Abel was with Ellie,
Abel was with Ellie.
and
And,
Miang
and
showed up.
Ellie at that time was actually
Okay.
more of a mother figure to Abel. Because Abel was a boy.
Yes, but
And that's where the cutscene comes in the sand in the desert.
I do.
Where she walks up to him
yes,
and he's a little
because-
boy.
And I wouldn't have known this otherwise, except for the fact that the podcastly peoples who we were with on episode 2. I do that a lot, anyways. They're called
Retrograde amnesia.
Amnesia. That's the one. Retrograde amnesia. All right. They had mentioned, hey, just take note, there are specifically 12 people in the desert walking
Yes,
away.
yes.
And he's like, don't leave me here.
Yes.
And it is the 12.
Yes.
And as you mentioned, the Gazel are the names of the 12 tribes of Israel.
Those were the original Gazel
Yeah.
humans.
And they,
In the original 10,000 year ago first civilization,
Yeah.
like the birth or genesis of mankind on this earth, this planet that they're on. And Abel was the only survivor of the Eldritch
Yeah.
crash. Ellie was now one of the two daughters of the original mother who came to him, had the will of, and we'll get to this when we talk about the wave existence, but the wave existence gave Ellie her will to be a companion to Abel because Abel made contact and that's what Abel wanted.
of course.
So Ellie was
Okay.
drawn to Abel
Yeah.
and they kind of paired together and as
Had some
companions.
kids. And then Cain just
Well, I don't know
kills
if
him.
Abel did because that would be Oedipus complex majorly.
It is, but this
But-
whole game, we'll get into
Yes.
this later, but this whole game is
I-
Oedipus pretty heavily.
I
think.
don't know if they were romantically involved in the first incarnations.
Okay.
I think by the second it became, when they were born into the same age range, from then on they had a romantic pairing after that. But I don't know if the but the Ellie from the 10,000 year ago timeline and Abel were romantically involved. I just don't know. It
Okay.
may be, but all we know is that she was an adult, at least looked that way, and he was a boy
Yes.
when they met. So
I know, but when humanity is at like 12 people, you gotta like
Do something.
weird things to propagate the human race. I'm just saying.
sure.
'Kay,
Anyways,
cool.
That's Kadamony, and all this scene is over. I think we've talked about everything here. Basically, she's like, I'm gonna go rejoin with God now, and she goes like jumps into
Ellie.
some place,
Yeah.
and Fei goes after her, and he's like lost for a little while. The rest of the party sort of like retreats.
This would be end of disc 2 kind of stuff.
I
would
guess
guess
if it had been
if
3
this-
discs,
as the game should have
Yeah.
been. That him jumping in after her and her.
That would have been the end of that
That would have been
next
the end of disc 2. We're on disc 3 now. This game was not just going to be 2 discs.
Okay, so when they separate, this is where the Merkava comes out, and all of it, the Seraph Angels are
Yeah.
going out, and they're just annihilating the rest of humanity.
Yes, they're just killing everybody. And it's a ton of them, and I'm guessing everyone's basically dead. Except
Yeah.
we show up later and it's like there's still people. But I don't know how, because that's
So-
insane. There's thousands of angels of death.
I believe even they like ask Ellie Miang directly, like, why do you have to kill all the other people? And she says, I don't know. She's like, I don't know. I just know that
protocol.
I'm made to do. It's just what I have to do next.
Yeah.
It's just like what the program says to do. And I think that they postulate a little later that it's because the remnant of humanity that would not transform into Wells/Seraph Angels would be a threat to God,
Yeah.
and so they just need to be eliminated.
Okay.
So they're going around trying to
Fair
kill
enough.
everybody, right? Okay, and then Fei gets discovered again a little while later, and he's brought back to Shavat. and then they all decide to put him in carbon freeze again.
Yeah, but this time it was a little more unanimous.
Yeah.
Because
They're
he
like-
was in a really weakened state, and they were like, Id's just going to show up. Fei's not even in there right now.
Yeah.
Like, he's like in a coma.
And Zephyr does a pretty good job, I feel. There's a scene with her and Citan talking, of explaining why they need to do this. Because Citan's like, what are you afraid of? Like, why do you feel like you need to do that? And she says something like, it's not that we're afraid of him, it's that we're trying to put a lid on the problem we caused, that Shavat caused.
That they're atoning for their own
Right, it's
sins,
like,
right?
because of what we did to Lacan, right, that power passed on into Fei. And like, we just need to like contain that. It's too dangerous. We created this problem with Lacan and Grahf. And we can't let Grahf get that power back. We can't let him recombine with Fei again, right? And on top of the fact that Id is out of control too. It's just like, this is our problem. We made this a problem in the first place. We have to contain it to, is more or less what she explains.
Yeah.
But she says
It is stronger than they guessed, though.
they don't realize how powerful it is.
Yeah.
She says, losing all faith in humanity, Lacan sought after its power, the Zohar. Lacan became Grahf, and the world collapsed. This tragedy happened because of the people's lust for power, specifically Shavat's lust for power. I must take part of the responsibility for not having been able to stop it. And now Fei, the one who has the same power as Grahf, we just wanted to seal up that dreadful power that arose from our own sinful deeds. So they're just trying to
It's a good explanation. It's not dealing with the problem.
It's not dealing with the problem, it's just
hiding it.
trying to delay an inevitable kind of a thing. And it's just like, well, that's not going to fix it at all.
Nope. And somehow kids can get in right up to where he's at, so that's weird.
Midori and you got Dan, right?
No.
But before that, you get a really cool scene with Fei, within Fei subconscious again. I really love how they get across these scenes with the abstract imagery. Like it's like a really...
I like it now.
Oh,
I
did you
didn't
not
like it before. No, I do like it. I like this scene.
Yeah.
But the previous times that they've utilized this abstract imagery, it's just confusing as balls.
Yeah.
Right? But understanding it at this point, it's like, yeah, I can appreciate
Starts
it.
to
I
come
can
together.
appreciate it now. Before, I'm just like, who's who and what's where?
I really love this scene. Id comes out to Fei, and he's in the little boy version with the hair in his eyes. That version of Id.
Yeah, that's great. I really like this.
Yeah. And this is something probably that we'll talk about a little bit in like the final episode wrapping up. With Id being like this red-haired, like very crazy, different-looking thing. Being almost like, is that like an effective way to hide the reveal, right?
Or does it just make people
Or
not
could
believe it?
Could they have somehow represented Id in like the hair in the eyes way,
in a different way, yeah.
without revealing that Id is
Making it
Fei
obvious.
for as long as they needed to? Like, was that an effective choice of hiding the fact that Id is Fei for as long as they
Yeah.
did? We'll
You
get
know,
into that later, but I
Ellie's
definitely...
hair turns purple after meeting so it's like, I guess people can just change their hair color. I don't know.
It's an anime thing, but
It is.
I like the version of Id that is represented as the boy with
Me
the hair
too.
in his eyes way more than the
Than Id.
red-haired warrior.
Me too. And especially because he's little.
Yeah,
He's a
the
kid.
He's like, it's more sinister that way.
It's
almost.
way more sinister, and you can't see his eyes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like in horror movies, they can make kids and like dolls and things scary because it's like
Become a
when you
zombie.
corrupt an innocent symbol like that,
That's like the worst thing you can do.
it's like more unnerving.
It's way unnerving, yeah.
So I like the kid version of Id better than the red-haired warrior Id. But
too.
Id says, I misjudged you. I didn't expect you. The fake personality would create a fourth persona. So
Yeah,
now we've got
that's crazy.
another persona. But this one is just a totally like vegetable state.
Right,
Who
it-
just,
it isn't a
just
thing.
allows Fei,
To
third
retreat.
personality Fei, to retreat and escape
Yes.
the pain.
Yes.
And it's just, I just put it on this this like drone fourth persona that just hangs there in the carbon
That's just
freeze.
asleep.
and deals with the pain while I escape into the subconscious for a while.
Yes.
Because it's too much to handle, right? And so Fei says, fourth persona. And Id says, he can't feel anything. He's shut up inside your ego. The pressing facts and truths you won't face. You're afraid of them, so you desired to completely shut yourself off from the outside world, and so you formed a fourth persona, a fourth Fei. The name doesn't matter. He's the one on the stage. He's the one who's in control of our body, but it is a useless form of resistance. So Id's about to take over. He's ready. He's ready now to, like, I'm going to kill all the other personas, and I'm going to be the only one left, and I'll take control of the body. That's what he's wanting to do right now. So he's grabbing the coward, and he's like walking off.
Follow me.
And then
into just blackness.
Yep, into blackness. And I really love how he says, he's the key. I merely want to borrow it. I've got to go somewhere. So he takes the coward with him, and he's just kind of sitting there in his spot. He just drags him off. And I really love how the camera kind of pans around, and Id says, are you coming too? And then it just like goes black. It's just so sinister and cool and mysterious. Like, and it's just like, oh my gosh, what's he going to do next?
Yeah.
Just awesome scene. Really awesome scene. But yeah, Fei has sort of created a fourth persona now to deal with all the pain while he escapes for a minute. But now the third personality of Fei is with the other two in the subconscious. And this is where, what I really love about this is that Id has, even from earlier when he was talking with Citan, but even now, he keeps condescending on the third persona.
Yeah.
He's like, you are beneath me, you're inferior to me, you have no control over me. Khan made you, and you're really annoying that you keep taking over, but I should have sovereignty here, and you're getting in my way, but he keeps talking down to him like he's useless or powerless or something. But it's the third persona who ends up mediating between the upper two. So Coward and Id cannot reconcile because, as we'll find out, Id has been treated really badly by Coward. All of the bad stuff Id was created to deal with, while the Coward held on to all of the good stuff, all the good memories, all of the happiness. He kept all that to himself and made Id deal with all the trauma and pain and bad stuff.
Crazy resentment,
Right, and so he hates the Coward because he won't let him see any of the good memories, and he has to deal with all the bad stuff.
Yeah.
And anyways,
this was actually really revealing for. Well, you keep talking.
Yeah.
I've got a thing I want to say.
But the third persona, the inferior one, the one that Id talks down to, he is the one who mediates between the two and brings them all back into one. I loved that element.
Yes.
That the one that was talked about as being inferior, not in control, lower down in the hierarchy, subject to Id. Is the one that actually brings it all together. I thought that was great.
Now, the Coward is. Tell me really quick. Is the Coward Fei?
He's the original personality.
The Coward's the kid sitting down watching movies all day.
Yeah, the child.
That's the Coward. So I took this in a different way. This is weird. This is so weird. So, and I don't even know what to do with the fourth persona. It's just like, just ignore that for now. But as it relates to ego, id, and superego, there is a funny distinction. The ego mediates between the two, and then the superego is the one that deals with culture and with presentation and formality and being around people and being pleasant and whatnot, right? Being sociable and surviving in social, whereas the id is surviving in nature, right?
Yeah.
And just amongst the raw elements and just do what you need to do to live, right? And then the ego is typically what you would think of as being yourself, mediating between the two. And that is what happens here. And it is the Fey man mediating between the Coward and id. But the Coward, I don't think the Coward is the superego. I think Fey is the superego.
Yes.
Okay, good. I was just making sure because it seemed a little different. This is so confusing because it is the superego that mediates between the ego and the id.
Yes.
Which is weird.
Yes.
But it's cool. I liked it a lot too. But it's so weird to think about it because when id says, you were created by your father, this is Freudian psychology. The father is what creates or forces the creation of the superego.
Yeah.
Because the mother is the nurturing mother, it's nature, and then the id is all about just nature, have your needs met, whatever basic needs. But then the father steps up and is culture and rules and just punishments and all this stuff. And that is the superego. And so when id says, Father, what's his name? Khan created you.
Yeah.
That's what he's referring to. He's referring to that's where the superego comes from. It comes from the father. And it's because it's not the natural relationship between the child and the mother.
Right.
Whereas it was the ego that retreated, and that's why he's a coward. Because the ego refused to choose between the two and solely abdicated its responsibility and sits in front of TV looking at old memories all day and refuses to do its job, right? Which means that id is relegated to one place with no mediator to like help him in any way. So they can't be a cohesive whole because the ego's not doing its job, and that's what creates the problem.
Yes.
It's not that id came up and id's too strong and oh no, I'm just doing what's naturally. No, you're not doing anything. And whatever happens because you are abdicating your ego responsibility. That's really cool.
The trauma
it's so cool
that the child Fei, coward, experienced made him retreat to a happy place where he didn't have to deal with anything.
And he didn't have to make choices.
Yes, and he just let id deal with all of the bad stuff. And he will not come out of that happy place at all.
But then the superego,
the third personality,
is just kind of there also, you know, but is part of the father within the psyche of the coward, basically. That's what we're dealing with, is the coward. Yeah, I love it, dude. I love it.
It's fantastic.
It's really, really cool. But it was confusing at first because I'm like, wait, I figured Fei was the ego. I just assumed that.
Yeah, Fei is the superego.
Yeah, Fei's the superego,
coward is the
created by the father. I just love it. It's so good.
Awesome. So before we dive into more of that, we get a really long flashback to the story of the 500-year ago War with Solaris, Lacan, Krelian, Sophia storyline.
Yeah.
It opens up with two of Bart. Well, it's Bart's direct great-great-great-grandfather or whatever, Roni Fatima.
Roni.
And then Margie's great-great-great-great whatever grandfather, Rene Fatima. They were brothers. So Rene and Roni Fatima, the dark-haired and the blonde-haired guys. And they are, so I think I think I got this wrong earlier in the podcast. It wasn't Ave that was allied with Nisan and Shavat against Solaris, because Ave didn't exist at this time.
Oh, I suppose so.
It was the country that Krelian came from, which was called Nimrod, that was allied with Nisan and Shavat against Solaris.
Oh, interesting.
It wasn't until after this war ended that Roni decided to regroup and form a new country, which was Ave.
No, that makes sense. Okay.
So that explains where Krelian comes from. He was like a military guy with Nimrod.
So Krelian came from Nimrod, but he's in Nisan.
Yeah, well, they're working together, so he's currently, they're getting ready for a big battle.
But Lacan is from Nisan, right?
Lacan, I think, is from, well, he might be from Nimrod
because he and Krelian are good friends.
I'm not sure.
Wherever they are, they were together.
Yeah, I'm not sure. He might have been from Nimrod. I don't know. I don't know if it ever specifies that.
Okay.
But anyways, they're sitting at a campfire, the four of them. And, they're kind of teasing Lacan over the fact that he likes Sophia. And
and he won't do anything because he's a coward.
You got to lighten up, bro. Like,
yeah.
They're trying to, get him to stop being so freaking depressed and sad and melancholy all the time.
Well, he's very not hating. What's
deprecating?
The word? Yeah, self-deprecating. He doesn't value himself at all. He doesn't feel like he has low self-esteem. That's probably the best way.
Well, he's just a lowly artist, and he feels like his station as a lowly artist, he's like, how can I accept the love of Sophia? She's like way above me, and she's way important to all of this. And I can't take that away from them.
It'd be like he's taking her away from other people,
Right, exactly. So anyways, they're having a little conversation, a little chat, and I really like the subtext here. They don't Krelian never declares his love for Sophia in any of this.
but you can tell.
But you can just tell he does.
And no, there is one line. There's one part where he says something like, "If I were you," ... But then he doesn't finish.
He doesn't finish it.
He doesn't finish.
It's all in the subtext.
Yeah, but it's like, dude, if I were you, I'd freaking marry them.
And he's mad at him because Krelian has
Yeah.
like a real genuine love for Sophia, the kind where it's like,
Yeah.
if she chooses Lacan, I'm going to support that because I want her to be happy.
Because I want her
even
best,
if it hurts
what's
me.
best for her.
But now you are taking that love she's trying to give you and you're rejecting it. You're hurting her. How dare you do that? He kind of gets mad at
Yeah.
Lacan for that reason. If she were sharing these feelings with me, and then he doesn't want to finish saying
Yes,
that,
exactly.
right? So he's like
that
pissed at
inserts
Lacan because
himself.
he's like, you're getting what I desire.
Yeah.
You're the recipient of that, and you're like not even accepting it, and that's BS.
Wasn't that essentially? Was it? Oh, who was it? The guy who ended up killing, was it Bishop Barron? No, sorry.
Stone.
I said that again. I don't know why I
Barron
said
is
that.
stuck in your brain.
It's somebody else. Bishop Stone,
Yeah.
had that same exact relationship
like
with Jesse,
with
right?
Jesse's wife. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, I liked her, but she liked you, but then I wanted the command of the thing, but then you turned it down. Like, what's wrong, man? You
Yeah.
have what you want. Why are you being like this, right?
Yeah. Similar situation.
It's like a similar situation there. I really like this though, because Lacan, I don't know how to explain it. Lacan is, I just lost. It. So I almost feel like Lacan and Sophia are destined to be together.
Yes.
That there's an attraction there that they can't get over. But were Lacan not to exist, then Krelian, it would have been Krelian.
Yeah.
Like if Sophia was just a regular person and Krelian was just a regular person, they would have fallen in love. Lacan would have had nothing to do with it.
Yes.
Right? But because Lacan's here, there's an unfair
It's like a fate.
fate thing that's getting in the way that's not fair, right?
Yeah.
That's not like, why are these two magnets for each other? It seems to be out of his control. Anyways.
Yes.
It's a thing that you can tell eats at him a little bit.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
It's a huge part of like his, what kind of like breaks him in the end,
Yeah.
right?
It's
But-
just not fair. And it's not.
Yeah,
but
it's totally
God's
not.
trying to recover his pieces, and this is the plan he made. So like you have to just deal with the fact that
Yeah.
there's something in both of them that's attracted to each other, and it's totally not natural, but deal with it.
Yep. And it's nice because you kind of get both of them kind of share how like Sophia is making them into better men. It's like
Yes.
they
Yeah.
feel they were this kind of way, but then Sophia came in
just,
and
like,
just like
looks at you
challenged
and-
them
Oh, sure.
just by treating them differently than they think they deserve to be treated.
Right.
So like Krelian describes how he was like this real vicious kind of cruel. He's like a military man, but she turned him on to reading. And
Yes,
like he
that's
started
right,
to read,
and she challenged him.
and like
Yeah.
she could just just with a look or just with the way she smiled at them or the way
Right.
that she talked to them makes them feel like there's something more to them than what they thought.
Yeah.
And so then he goes to Melchior, Torah Melchior, and gets the nanomachine, like the textbooks on nanomachine technology.
Yeah.
And he starts to become
And he just
interested
reads
in
all
this
these
new
books.
thing.
Yes.
And he's like, maybe this is something I'm more passionate about than like my military career. And like he's just wants to learn all this new stuff, and like Sophia turned him onto that path, and he feels like he's a better person because of it, and so he
He owes
loves
her,
her,
and,
right?
yeah.
Lacan, a similar thing.
Yep.
But yeah, Lacan's really struggling because he doesn't feel like he deserves any of it, and he doesn't want to like take the Holy Mother away from her people, right?
I mean, that would be kind of weird.
Yeah, and
That'd be strange.
so then we see the scene where he's kind of packing up his painting supplies, and he's like, I don't want to finish this painting. And this is where Krelian says to him, you're just running away. By painting her portrait, you notice the gap between your inner emptiness and her inner abundance, and you could not fill that gap. That's why you're quitting your painting, you're refusing her. Even so, you still can't bring yourself to leave her, can you? In spite of that, why is it that she continues to smile at you? You who can't accept her feelings, you who won't accept her feelings, tell me why. If it was me who was receiving such feelings, and then he trails off. And Lacan goes on to say, why would she open her heart to a mere artist like me, right? So I copied something down here. This is from Xenogears' Perfect Works, and it goes into Lacan a little bit. The kind of like title of this section is called The Psychology of Lacan Who Wanted Power.
Okay.
It says, Sophia tells Lacan, you are one who cannot bear to see another hurt by your own actions. Even while he is in love and aware of his special love for her as herself, he realizes he can't have her to love to himself alone, as she is the Holy Mother that the people venerate. And he adopts a false front of nonchalance, even on the inside, in order to lie to himself and escape her love. Compared to Sophia, who could provide peaceful refuge to others, Lacan felt only disappointment and self-loathing, thinking he was devoid of any power himself. Now this goes on to his pursuit of power when she's gone. He felt he didn't have power. He's powerless in comparison to her, right? Let's see. Thinking he was devoid of any power himself. In reaction to her death, he falls into despair, and his disappointment and self-loathing towards his own powerlessness turns into a lust for acquiring enormous power. The drive to tangibly satisfy his desire may have been what caused his transformation into a destructive personality. So I don't believe, based on what the time is right now and how many more pages of notes I have here, that we're going to be able to delve completely into the concept of desire according to Jacques Lacan, the French psychoanalyst, who this character is based on in part. But his desire is something to probably look into for later, for people watching, because it describes Lacan's transformation into Grahf really well. There are other parts of it too. He has another concept called other that I think plays into it. And he kind of has, well, there's like mirror stage, but there's also his sort of take on Freud's Oedipus complex.
Yes, which is a more rational take. a better take, I think.
A better take.
Yeah.
That plays into all of this Xenogears stuff too, but in particular, desire.
Yes.
And it's mentioned here, the drive to tangibly satisfy his desire, according to Lacan's concept of desire, may have been what caused his transformation into a destructive personality. There's another line from Grahf later that will confirm this too, and I will bring that up at the time, but I don't know if today we'll have the time to like dive into Lacan's theory.
We're going to push this off
That might be pushed a little bit.
Okay, fair enough.
Because I don't know if we'll have time for it. But anyways, that's what the character's based on. That's why his name is Lacan, right?
Yeah.
We see another quick scene where Sophia is injured or something, and like Lacan's there, like hanging his head, and Krelian comes running in, and he strikes Lacan, and he's like, "Lacan, what are you doing? You keep back. I knew we couldn't leave Sophia in your care. I'll protect her, even if it costs me my life." So he has some resentment towards Lacan because Lacan seems to be kind of powerless and weak, and Lacan knows that, and he hates himself for it.
Yes.
And Krelian's like, "Why does she love you? This bullcrap."
Yeah. Also, Krelian saying, "I'll protect you with my life," yet in the end, she's dead and he's still alive.
Yep, because she self-sacrifices.
Because he couldn't do what he thought he could either.
I really love this line from Ellie, because, so she's hurt, she's injured, she's kind of lying in bed, and I think Roni comes in and tells Krelian, like, just go to rest for a while, like, I'll look after her, we need you to, like, be fresh. He's like, fine, and he leaves, and Roni kind of looks at Lacan, who's just there all, like, depressed, and then he walks out, and then Ellie wakes up and starts talking to
it almost as if
I keep saying Ellie, it's Sophia.
Sophia. It's almost as if she was awake the whole time, but she was waiting for them
to leave so that she could talk to Lacan.
She's like, "Hey, I want to talk to you for a
I
little
really loved this because like Lacan's whole hang up here is that I can't be with you. The people need you. They venerate you. Like you need to be a symbol to those people. Without you, like they'll have no hope and all this stuff.
There's some psychological stuff to this too, to Lacan's and its religious stuff specifically, because this woman is the mother of Nisan. This is not stated specifically, but this is religion and history of religion going back 100,000 years. That the mother of Nisan needs to be a virgin. Basically, would be the idea, right?
Sure.
That if you, and this happens in pop idol culture all the time, like specifically in Japan, if there's a pop idol woman, and all of a sudden she's dating a boy, it's a
like,
huge scandal. It can
yeah.
ruin her entire career.
Yeah.
This happens in Korea too, like crazy. It's like you are not allowed to date. It's written in their contract. If you're going to be an idol for the people of this country, you can't date anybody. You have to, at least not publicly, you have to remain a virgin or appear as though you're a virgin.
single.
If
Because it contributes
if people
to
know
your,
you're not a virgin, it literally ruins the whole thing, and you're no longer an idol. They're gone.
contributes
They'll bring up a new
to,
idol.
To your desire, or like people's the
Yes.
young men's desire.
Yes,
Right?
where it's like, oh my gosh.
Some of that is true even in American pop culture. Obviously, they're
Yes,
not
it
writing
is.
it into the contracts or anything like that.
We still allow our celebrities to date.
Celebrities date, but
At least our young celebrities.
at least what I've observed is a lot of times, like if there's like an attractive male celebrity
Mm-hmm.
and girls find out he's engaged or something, they're
Yes.
like, oh no. Like,
Yes, it's rough.
there's a fantasy
It's rough.
involving celebrities where like, oh, I could.
I could be the one.
the one,
But
right?
this is the idea, though. There can only be one.
Yes.
That's the idea in our minds. It's like, I could be the one. If they're dating someone else, that means I'm second. I'm not interested anymore.
Yep.
Right?
And then the attractiveness
Yes.
or the desire for that celebrity decreases.
It decreases,
and then therefore,
you're just like, nah.
in order to keep up that image, a lot of times they're kind of secretive with their
Yes.
relationships.
And that's why
stuff.
it's such a scandal when,
Yeah.
especially in Japan or Korea, when this stuff breaks, it's like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. It's a scandal, and their celebrity, their fame is almost done for because they are gods and goddesses of the culture, you know? And Mother Nissan, I would assume that it would be expected of her that she remains a virgin, and that's huge pressure on Lacan to take that from the people, to be like, I'm going. So there's an episode, you guys should watch a show, it's called Terrace House. It's a great, great show. There's several hints of this throughout that show. Now, at the end of the latest season, actually, it ended very tragically and very strange. So we don't need to get into how this latest season ended. But in seasons 1 and 2, there are times where there is an actual, like a real big famous celebrity shows up as a young, like 20-year-old, shows up at Terrace House. And it's just guys and girls living together. Maybe one of them will date the other. It's a what do you call it? It's a reality show.
Oh, reality,
right?
yeah.
But if you know anything about Japan pop culture, you know the band AKB48. Everyone will know it if you know the Japan music industry, right? Well, there was a girl from AKB48 that showed up at the house as one of the guests.
Oh, shoot.
And the guys were like, every guy liked her, but it was like,
They can't.
we can't. And they even bring it up in the show. They're like, yeah, she has to quit the band if she gets in a relationship with a boy or a girl, I guess. But if they get in a relationship at all, they literally they're resigning from the band. They're quitting. That's how it works. And finally, a guy does get the guts to approach her, and she just rejects him so hard. It's the worst. It's the most awkward moment in that whole show. He tries to hold her hand, and she's just like, no. And I don't even know why she's there, because it's probably to boost her publicity, her image, you know?
Just to push her brand around.
But there was another celebrity that shows up in season 2 or 4, I can't remember, and it's revealed that she was secretly having an affair with someone else in that house, and it just destroyed her entire career. She's done for. Nobody cared about her anymore after that, and she knew it, and it was like, oh my gosh, it's the craziest thing ever. You guys, anyways, don't need to get on a tangent on that, but it is so heavily ingrained in culture, specifically Japanese culture, but all cultures, and specifically from a religious point of view, the mother of Christ being a virgin and the idea of virginity is very much ingrained, and that's what Lacan's dealing with when he's like, do I take the idol of our entire culture and make her not an idol anymore? People won't look up to her anymore.
Really,
it's heavy. It's really heavy.
Really good observation, because her response to that fear you're talking about, which when you put it that way, makes it even more, I guess, like convincing as to why Lacan is so resistant to this, right? Her response to this as she's laying there in like the hospital bed is, humans aren't all that frail, you know. They don't need a symbol who is just appearances
she
only.
wants to stop being a celebrity.
Yes.
She's like, please
and she
end
doesn't
my
think,
idol.
She doesn't think people need it.
Yeah.
Right, she's not convinced they do. I believe that if you have light in your heart, you can overcome any hardship. What I have been doing is simply showing people that such light exists in the hearts of everyone. That's what she did with Krelian. That's what she did with Lacan. That's why they felt so good about themselves, and they got on this new path. And Krelian starts reading books and becoming an intellectual instead of a military guy. And she just shows you have that light in you, that light of the monad, that light of the wave existence, whatever you want to call it, that piece of godliness that is in you.
Yes.
Right?
So she's technically correct. She doesn't need to be there to tell them that.
The society has constructed it that way.
Exactly.
But she doesn't think the society needs to be constructed.
Yes, but society doesn't know that. And society will very quickly either find a new idol or devolve into absolute chaos, because as much as people don't need someone to do that, you kind of do need someone to do that to tell you what you have within yourself.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing, but people, you have it in yourself, but you need someone to tell you you have it in yourself or show you. Otherwise, you just never discover it.
Yeah. She goes on to say, I'm just a woman, and to fulfill my womanhood, I am prepared to throw away anything, even this position. I'm just playing the role of Sophia. Sophia is the persona. And I love this because Lacan calls her Ellie. He doesn't call her Sophia.
That's right.
Because she knows her real person, the real personality that is awakened is actually Elheim, not Sophia. Sophia is the persona, the mask she wears in public, the role she takes on for Nisan.
Is the original.
But that's not who she really is. And when she's with Lacan, she can be her real self. She reveals her real self, Ellie, and he calls her Ellie. He doesn't call her Sophia when they're alone together.
Right.
Which I loved.
That's cool.
I loved that.
Yeah. At first I was like, why is he still calling her Ellie? But yeah, it's beautiful.
But I am still me. I haven't changed. A cowardly, selfish crybaby. I'm still the same. Could you live a lie like that and still be happy? I don't want to do that. Oh, Lacan, I want to live more honestly with myself, to be able to tell the man I love that I do love him, and I don't care if I get hurt or rejected. You only have one life. I don't want to turn around later and regret not having done such things. I can almost see this like one of those pop idols you're talking about.
Having that exact
conversation.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, I'm done with this role, this persona that I wear in public, this life of fame and whatever. I just want to be able to be my true, genuine self with a person.
Usually for the girls around the age of 27 or so, they finally can do something like that, because enough people no longer idolize you. They're onto the new 20-year-old idols, whatever, that they can have that conversation of like, you know what, I'm ready to end this. You can't be an idol till you're 100. It just doesn't work that way. You may as well just choose to end it now instead of letting it naturally end later and then regretting that you didn't do it sooner.
Yep. Okay, so it cuts away from that scene. They have that nice moment together, but it kind of just rushes forward a little bit to the moment where Sophia sacrifices herself in this kamikaze attack on the Merkava. I think it's the Merkava. And she's, talking to Krelian and Lacan over the comms and telling them, they're like, hey, stop, like, don't do it. And she's like telling them why she has to do it.
She's suicide bombing. She's
she's just
going right
straight into it, right?
Yeah.
And so she does that. She tells them to live, and she goes and crashes and kills herself.
Yeah.
Now
that is technically kamikaze, and by the way, kamikaze is referring to like a godly act, right? The divine wind is what kamikaze
means. Because the word
kami
is...
Yeah, kami means God, kaze means wind.
Yeah.
And it typically would refer to like a tsunami or something like that, destroying the Mongol invaders or something like that. That had happened 500 years ago. It happened like 2 or 3 times. But Sophia having a connection with God and being self-sacrificial, it is that concept.
It's literally kamikaze.
Yeah.
But then we see Krelian and some of the others who are in the aftermath of this. And I guess we got into this a little bit with what Zephyr said earlier about Shavat. But I haven't I don't think I've explained it completely.
Well, they split it up in the game.
What happened was that some of the people in Shavat, I'm guessing the elders in particular, they started to kind of get a little power hungry in this struggle. They didn't just want to destroy Solaris and then, go with what the mother of Nisan was going to try to establish afterwards. They wanted a little more dominion than that. And so Shavat made a deal with Solaris to split dominion of the world between them. And the trade they had to make was that Solaris had to give Miang
They deliver, yeah.
to Shavat. And the Gazel Ministry was fine with this at this point because Miang and the Gazel Ministry were not, they were not on the same page. The Gazel Ministry thought the time for the resurrection of God was here.
At that
They thought they could do it
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
And Miang didn't think so. Miang wanted to have another wipe of civilization and start over. Because she didn't think the current human beings were like ready to be adequate parts for resurrecting Deus. She thought there was some problem with the genetic engineering they had been doing. They just weren't ready yet. And she thought wiping it and starting over was the best option. But we're 500 years away from the time of the gospel. This is really risky. Gazel Ministry wants to just do it now.
Yeah.
So they're fine with getting rid of Miang. That's what they're going to trade. And in return, Shavat has to give the main army and Ellie in particular, Sophia, to Solaris. So Shavat makes this deal and betrays Nisan and Nimrod. And basically the battle that happens where like Krelian and all those people and Lacan and Roni are kind of on the front lines, this battle where Ellie sacrifices herself, that's the battle where they were essentially betrayed. So Miang goes to Shavat, Sophia sacrifices herself, and that army is wiped out.
Did Sophia ever actually spend any time in that prison in Shavat? Remember there's the prison there?
So Miang in Shavat?
Sorry, Ellie. There's that prison in Shavat?
No, Miang was there, but not Ellie.
Okay. But
Not Sophia.
So when they're talking about this is the prison room and whatever,
Yeah, that was Miang.
that was Miang.
They're
that
talking
was
about
in there.
Miang who was in
Okay.
there. And Lacan who came and freed her from the prison.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll get there in a second. So
Okay.
they're standing there on in the aftermath of this battle, right? Krelian and a few people. Roni and Renee and Lacan are there as well. And Krelian says, "We were sacrificed as pawns in order to protect their own authority." Sophia was, "Is this the ideal world we've been searching for? What have we been doing? Heading towards Sophia's ideals? Is this our salvation? This isn't fair. Sophia was sacrificed for those bastards." Sophia said, "If you just have faith, the path to what you hope for will open. But look at reality. God didn't answer our prayers. Is that because we didn't have faith? Even if we didn't have faith, Sophia did. Why did she have to be sacrificed? Is God dead? Is he just not there? Maybe God never even existed to begin with." His whole faith
it
has been
broke
shaken.
His whole world.
He just has no idea what to make of this. Were we abandoned by God? Is God even real? Have I just been praying in vain this whole time? Sophia had faith and God didn't save her. I don't get it. Like, how could this happen? And then he remembers, there's a quick flashback, I freaking love this, to a teaching. It goes back to the cathedral in Nisan.
Oh, yeah.
And Sophia is like teaching a sermon. And she says, "Faith in God, do not look for it on the outside."
It's within, yeah.
Yeah. "For it is something one must build from within oneself." Gnostic, 100%
Yes.
Gnostic teaching there,
yeah,
right?
totally.
The Church of Nisan is Gnostic.
The Church of Gnostic Christianity, right? Yeah.
So he misinterprets this, though, in the moment, and he decides that he has to create God himself.
Yes. Or live to see the end of humanity.
Yeah.
Something like
He says, "If God doesn't exist in our world, then I will create God with my own hands," and he leaves. And this is what sets him on the path, first of all, to get revenge on the people of Shavat who did all this, which he gives them the life extension treatments, and he gives them a gate and separates them from everything so that they have to watch it all happen. Essentially, they have to watch him go create or like fill in with the nanotechnology,
nice.
the deficiencies of Deus, and like make it all come together.
That's
and they
how
have
he
to
did
just
that?
sit there in the sky and watch it. They have to live through the whole thing. He made them watch as he like did this, right?
That's crazy.
That was Krelian's revenge on them. So freaking crazy. And this is where Roni decides he's going to regroup and create a new country, which becomes Ave, obviously. And Lacan then goes and frees Miang from her prison in Shavat. And this is what they were referring to earlier when we were in Shabbat.
I had assumed it was Sophia that was in there.
Yeah, so it was actually Miang.
Crazy.
And so Miang, remember, wants the destruction of the human race because it needs to restart for new genetic engineering. And Solaris banished her, and so she's like, I'm going to use you to accomplish that. So she sends Lacan on the mission, who his desire, his Lacanian desire, is power.
Yep, power.
Because he felt powerless. She sees that, and she exploits it. Go find the Zohar.
Yeah.
Make contact with the Zohar. You'll get all that power you're looking for. What she's really looking for is for him to go awaken the Diablos army and destroy the Earth.
Half the continent. Yeah, just like everything. Yeah.
So Lacan goes out to find the Zohar. He goes on a journey. He makes contact with the wave existence, but it's not a fully successful contact. He makes contact with the wave existence. He talks with the wave existence, and he mentions this later. But because of how unhinged and broken he is psychologically at this time, he comes to a very faulty conclusion about what he hears. And so he decides this whole freaking cycle of rebirth and stuff needs to end for us to be released from all this trauma and pain that we keep going through in the generations. Ellie and I having to be reincarnated over and over again.
and over.
Like,
because you would think, oh, why just do away with yourself? Why do you have to kill everything? But it's like that. This does not stop until everything is
everything
gone
ends
in his mind. Yeah.
I have to end it all. I have to destroy everything.
Which does beg the question why Grahf and Krelian get along or work together or don't hate each other or don't try to subvert each other all the time. It almost seems like Grahf will listen to Krelian and do what he wants, even though Krelian should know that Grahf is trying to kill Mother God and Krelian is not. So their goals are different. Grahf will destroy everything, including Krelian.
That's a good point.
There's some huge, but instead they're just like, yeah, we're going to pretend that we're on the same side, even though we're nowhere near.
So instead of jumping into that right now, because we are getting to the point where I'm having to be nervous about time, our final episode of the podcast, so next week we're going to play to the end of the game, and we're going to summarize that stuff. But then we'll do one additional episode in the final one, and that's where we're going to bring Chris and Eric from Retrograde Amnesia back. We're going to bring Pat Holloman on, and we're going to actually have the audience and you and anyone else pitch any questions you have about the story that you feel like tripped up on or confused. And I think we'll kind of all come together, having read perfect works, having other people on who have years and years of studying this stuff, and I think we'll try to get to the bottom of all those answers.
Okay.
But that's a good one to bring up for later. So when Lacan makes contact with the Zohar, his second personality is born, which is Grahf, which is like the embodiment of his desire. And he kind of takes over. You can almost think of Grahf like the id of Lacan in a way.
More or less.
But it's not that he's id, he's the desire. He's the Lacanian desire, not the Freudian id.
The seeker of power.
Yeah. Although the desire, the id, and the shadow, Jung's shadow, are all kind of a similar.
Very similar.
They have similarities between them.
So
Grahf is kind of like, he's not Lacan's id, but it's a similar thing where the embodiment of his desire creates a personality that sort of takes over Lacan's body. Yeah. And he goes and gets the Diablos army, and they almost wipe out the entire human race. It's like 98% or something that. And they kill the Gazel. This is where the Gazel get killed.
Oh, this is where they die. I thought they died previous.
Even Solaris can't hold this army back. It's freaking crazy. And it's only Roni Fatima and some of the others in their Omni gears that are able to stop Grahf and the army. And so that's what happens. There's a quick scene where it's some of the people from Shabbat, like Zephyr and Roni Fatima and some of the other people. And Lacan sort of comes back into control in the moment of his death. And it's like a hellscape, just like scorched earth.
Yeah, right at the end. And I'm noticing a theme, by the way, with Karen and with possibly Miang and with Lacan, that right when you die, or right around the time that you die, is when the body, the original, who should be in control of the body, emerges for the last moments of life, basically.
Yeah.
That's a thing that keeps happening.
Yeah, and he kind of says, like, he's confused, like Lacan is confused, like, wait a minute, like, what's happening here? Aren't you supposed to be my friends? Like, why have you betrayed me? Mm-hmm. And then he like looks around and he's like, did I do this? Like, what have I become? And he's like all freaking confused. So Lacan dies there, and so the contact then is transmigrated and ends up reincarnating as Fei 500 years later. But the other persona, Grahf, lives on and starts jumping. He gains the ability to jump into other people from the wave existence.
Right, so he becomes sort of a wave existence himself and can kind of go around.
His contact with the wave existence gave Grahf the power to jump into bodies. And so now Grahf is waiting for the contact to reincarnate so he can join with the second half of himself and gain the power that he seeks.
Yeah, because he thinks that's how it works.
Because he's obsessed with power. Remember all the times he talks about the power?
I sure do remember.
He loves power.
Yes, he does.
That's what he wants. Because he felt powerless as Lacan. Okay, now we get some pretty crazy stuff. I think Dan comes in to where Fei is in carbon freeze.
Well, he wants to like kill us, or he hates us, or
he's still on his revenge path. But this is some, I've talked about how much I don't like Dan as a character earlier in the podcast. There is an element to this that I think you can look at, because I think I pitched like a replacement for Dan's character to be maybe like Timothy or something like that, where it would make more sense that Timothy could actually like get into and succeed through
the tournament.
Several rounds of a tournament,
yes, exactly.
and actually chase Fei around and be a threat instead of it being this silly little like 50-year-old looking boy with a receding hairline who's like super annoying.
Yeah,
who I felt was ruining most of the scenes he was in. Anyways, there is a point to be made here that a child seeing what they've done to Fei despite his feelings for him and being like, wait a second, this is too far. Like, and just like sort of his resentment being kind of dissolved in seeing how badly they've treated Fei. And sort of like remembering the fact that he liked Fei at one time and just letting those feelings go. Yeah. It's probably easier for a child to do than it would be for a man to do.
I think that's probably true.
And so there is sort of like a nice little resolution here
yeah.
for Dan's resentment being let go. And the fact that he's a child is more convincing that he can do it like that.
Quicker.
Right?
Yeah, I didn't question how quickly.
Yeah. So he kind of walks in and he's like, this is terrible. No matter what, this is going way too far. So Dan, as a child, is more of an innocent child. I don't know how innocent he is. He's a pretty mischievous kid. But anyways, as a child, probably would have an easier time letting that go so quickly, right?
Yeah.
But id is you get the scene in Fei's subconscious, right, where id starts making his plan to take over.
Yeah, that's where this happens, yeah.
And taking over the body, id is able to break out of the carbon freeze and go looking for the Zohar again.
Yeah. Now,
I really like this scene in Fei's subconscious again.
Well, Midori shows up, and it's not entirely clear. Does id kill the kids?
I don't think so.
He spares them?
I think they run away. Well, because Fei talks to them really quickly before breaking out. He says, Dan, Midori,
he says run
away.
But I don't recall them actually running.
Well, it doesn't show it, but I'm pretty sure they got away.
Okay.
And id only really cares about getting to the Zohar anyways. It doesn't care about kids, I would think. Anyways, I kind of already talked about this note about how I love how Fei's third persona is the one that mediates between the two.
Yes.
But the way that it is talking down to him, right? Like, you don't need to know. You'll only disappear soon, along with your basic persona, the coward. I'll rule my being through the power of the existence. Of course, you don't know, but it is etched in my metempsychotic memory. Metempsychotic memory. I did not know what that word meant. So I'm going to pull it up.
Don't know either.
I looked it up. What is metempsychotic? It has to do with transmigration of a soul. So it is the one who's carrying all the memories of the past lives.
Yes.
So metempsychosis refers to transmigration of a soul, especially its reincarnation after death.
Okay.
So that's what he's referring to. So id is the one carrying the metempsychotic memories of
Okay.
the former contacts' lives. And so he says, it's etched in my metempsychotic memory. I came to reestablish contact with the existence, to tie together all the threads of your memory since ancient times and cut them off. So id right now is getting ready to kill the other personas, take over, and get rid of any of his memories of former contacts because I'm done with that. I don't want to be the contact. I want to destroy everything. I want to return. This is the Grahf desire part, right? Like
Right.
he's trying to fulfill Graf's
Okay.
plan. So id goes there to where the Zohar is. Citan and party follow him, and they're kind of like confronting him. You have a little battle against id for a second, but then Wiseman jumps in,
Yeah.
and Wiseman says something really important here about, and this refers to why Lacan's contact was not successful,
Yeah.
but why Fei's following contact that's coming up is
It will be.
successful. Wiseman says the contact with Zohar was meant to have been done after the unifying of Fei's true personality. So Wiseman is aware that Fei needs to become whole first before he contacts the Zohar, or before he contacts the wave existence. Otherwise, it might go really bad, like last time when the Khan did it. Now, the reason Wiseman knows this is because Wiseman is actually Khan,
Yeah.
who is actually Grahf Grahf has, what do you call it? Possessed the body of Khan.
Yes.
So we talked about the Khan's body died and reincarnated. The contact reincarnated as Fei. Grahf jumped bodies.
Yeah.
Grahf in
Like
the scene,
Miang in a similar
right?
Yeah.
In the scene we saw earlier, the anime cutscene where Khan is facing off against Grahf and id. Remember?
I actually mentioned this when I made my guess that was in spoiler alert territory
Yeah.
a couple episodes ago.
Yes.
That but my guess was that Grahf was Fei's father's id, which in some weird way is sort of what's happening, but not technically. This
Not
is
technically.
a different way.
Yeah. It's close. It was a
But
close
when he
guess.
says, I won't let you have him, he is talking to himself. And whatever ends up happening, he is able to, through a horrible
I think what he's
bloodbath.
saying is, I won't let you have my son because
Yes.
his son
no,
is.
well, he's talking to himself about his son.
Oh, right.
He's saying, when he says, I won't let you have him, the you is the Graph that's in his mind.
Oh,
in
sure.
his
Because
body, right?
Graph is taking Lacan's body.
Yeah,
or
Graf's taking
Khan's body.
Khan's body,
Yes.
and Khan is like, I'm going to resist you. And to some extent, Khan is actually successful enough to
Right.
be Wiseman sometimes and
Yeah, so
help out Fei.
Every once in a while, Khan is able to get control of the
Yes.
body again. And when he does that, he appears as Wiseman.
And why he used that to go fight us in the tournament, I don't know. But the other ones make sense. That tournament one was a little strange, but
Anyways, yeah, Wiseman is Khan when Khan is in control of his own body.
yeah.
When Graph takes control, it's
Graph.
Graph. So Wiseman and Graph are the same person.
Which is strange because they're. No, they weren't in the same place. It was Id fighting. That's true. It was Id fighting Wiseman
Yeah.
and beating him up. It was not Graph. That's
Yep.
right. That's right.
Graph and Wiseman have never appeared in the same scene before
Yes.
until now, and it's actually a really cool one.
And the way he just kind of like
just
flips to
flips.
Graph, and
Yep.
and Fei's like, what?
So, anyways, that's who Wiseman is. Wiseman is there as Fei's father, Khan,
Yeah.
trying to get him to have a successful contact with the wave existence.
Yeah.
He's trying to bring Fei back out of id and get him to unify his personality and make contact with the Zohar because he knows, having Graph inside of him,
Yes.
what happened last time the contact tried to unsuccessfully contact the wave existence
And why it was unsuccessful.
and why it didn't work.
Yeah.
Because Lacan was broken psychologically when he made contact at that time. Fei needs to become whole psychologically to make contact with him now if it's going to work. Because we're out of time. The
It's
time of the
almost like-
gospel is upon us.
It's almost like otherwise, how does which part of the human does the existence like connect with?
Yeah.
It can't it needs to be a whole thing. Otherwise, it's just a piece, and then the existence only has a piece.
Yeah.
Like it needs to be the whole thing.
Yep. So as he's fighting him, you going back into Fei subconscious. So
Yeah.
Wiseman Khan is fighting Id, who is in control of the body.
Yeah.
And while that's happening, the third persona, Fei, that we've known in the game, is trying to mediate between the coward and Id and the subconscious to
Yes.
try to like reunite the personalities into one.
And
This
so
is simultaneously happening.
And so Id is showing him all this stuff. Like, look at this coward. He's keeping all the good memories to himself.
Yep.
He's enjoying the past while it was nice, and I have to deal with everything else that's happened. Anytime something bad happens, he retreats, and then I'm what's left, and I'm the one who has to deal with, the parents dying and with anything bad that happens.
Trauma and the pain and the
It's
suffering.
always Id that has to do that.
Yeah, has to take all of that.
And I didn't understand how this was going to happen. Fei is just like, hey guys, we need to work together somehow or whatever. And Id's like, let me show you something real quick.
Yeah.
And like this is what Fei has to do, and I love this. This is psychologically how it works. This is the whole Freudian system. You have to confront what you're afraid of. And Carl Jung was big on this too. I think most psychologists are like this. It's like if you're afraid of something, but you don't want to confront it, you want to overcome your fear without confronting your fear.
it, yep.
You can't. This is in Empire Strikes Back. There's that beautiful scene where Luke walks into the cave,
Yeah.
right? And Yoda's like, what you see in there is your own thing, but it's not going to be pretty and you're not going to like it.
Yeah.
And Luke walks into the cave and he fights Darth Vader and then he cuts his head off and then he looks down and he sees his own face because Darth Vader, at least in within his psyche, is his own shadow that he needs to confront, and it's himself. Anyways, it's just beautiful. And so it is like, I've got some things to show you. Let's see if you can even handle it. Because Coward here couldn't handle it. I think I'm the only one strong enough to handle it. So I should be the one who rules this stuff because I'm the only one who's capable of it.
Yeah.
So you'll come see what I've seen. And Fei doesn't like it at first.
Yep.
But he's strong and he's like, no, I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna accept all of this stuff.
Yep.
And he sees his mom dying and
All the experimentation that
the
was done to him.
experiments, that were done by Karen.
The fact that Karen got taken over by Miang.
Yeah, all that stuff. And then, I can't remember if his...
So, okay, I'm going to take
What
over.
happens with his father?
I'm going to
Okay,
take
you
over
go
here
ahead
real
from there.
quick
Go ahead.
because this is where Karen Horney's theory of neurosis comes into this.
Oh, okay.
It's really important.
This is where Karen comes from, I guess.
Why she's named Karen,
name,
right?
yeah.
So I think it's actually kind of cool that Fei was about to give in to Id. He started to understand him. He
Yes,
was like,
and he's like,
being
"You're right,
here, he's
this
like,
is
man,
beyond
all this
me."
pain and all this stuff, it
Yeah.
actually kind of feels good. Maybe I should just give it. But it's Citan's words floating into his subconscious, being like, weren't you going to save Ellie? And it's like, oh yeah, Ellie.
That's right.
Ellie.
Ellie's what does it.
I
Ellie's
gotta
what does it.
go save Ellie. So he gets his resolve back, right? And so then he has them both there, the coward and the Id. And like you're saying, Id is talking about everything despised and unwanted he pushed onto me while he shut himself up in his own little shell. He repeatedly plays the time that he was full of happiness. He lives in his own little happy world while I'm still alive only because of what is left over or what's in those leftover dregs. So all that stuff that you were talking about.
Yeah.
Now, Karen Horney theory of neurosis. She placed significant emphasis on parental indifference towards the child, believing that a child's perception of events, as opposed to the parent's intentions, is the key to understanding a person's neurosis. For instance, a child might feel a lack of warmth and affection should a parent make fun of the child's feelings. Even if the parent just feels like, I'm just playing around.
Yeah, it's no big.
It's the
endearing.
perception that the child has.
That is true.
Yes.
What she's saying there is 100% true.
Yes.
Yeah.
The parent may also casually neglect to fulfill promises, which in turn could have a detrimental effect on the child's mental state.
Yep.
Now, what's really important about what you're talking about, Id tries to show what occurred first.
Yeah.
And in Id's version, Karen is killed by little boy Fei, right?
Yeah.
Not only that, but it goes through the cruelty that Karen showed, the indifference,
Yes,
the,
she didn't care.
the pain, the trauma, the
Yeah.
physical, all that experimentation.
And she was there the whole time, but she never once came to help him.
Also, Id's hatred of his father, Khan, because Fei tried to tell his father what Karen was doing, and he didn't believe him. He didn't listen. He was too busy on his business in Shabbat and just kept leaving him alone with her and wouldn't listen. So both parents, in Id's perception, showed this total indifference to what was going on to him, and the way Id perceived that, because he didn't get the last important bit, because the coward held on to that part for himself.
Yes, exactly. That's the important part.
Where Karen actually jumped in front of the beam and saved him.
Yeah.
Id didn't get to see that part, where Karen's actual genuine love shined through Miang, and where she gave the ultimate sacrifice of love to save him. Id didn't have that context. Id's neurosis...
That changes everything for him.
Id's neurosis is totally based on an incomplete understanding of the parents' intentions. It's only his perception of what that meant that turned him into this. And the reason he didn't have that context is because the coward wouldn't let him see anything good. He kept all of that for himself.
Yeah. And when you look at it this way, it's almost like, because when you first learn about the coward and you first see the coward, it's like, he's just a kid who's trying to relive the past. He's doing nothing wrong. Just leave him alone. He's just trying to do whatever makes him happy, right? But it's at this scene where you realize that, each section can't entertain the same things at the same time, right? So if this kid is reliving certain old memories, it means that Id can't. And the assumption was Id could just sit next to him and watch the TV screen. But that's not, that may be how the abstract, the way they portrayed it kind of makes it seem that that's possible, but it's not possible. Id can't. Id does not know what the ego knows. Id does not see what the ego sees. And if the ego continues to, as I mentioned earlier, abdicate its responsibility and remain in this little world doing its own thing, then it's actually keeping all that from Id, the whole time. So... anyways, the fact that he's a coward actually makes it a bigger deal. That there is actually there is a price to be paid on both sides. That there's wrong done on Id's part as well as on the coward's part. That is keeping them from being a whole person. It's not, you can't just lay it all on the Id and say you're so bad, you're so bad.
And that's what the third personality, Fei, it ultimately helps them realize. It's like, listen, all this bad stuff happened to you. That is true. But it's not because of what happened that the problem happening with us is going on. It is you, the coward, withholding this. It's our fault. We have to take responsibility for what's happening here.
Each one needs to because you can scapegoat each other all you want, but we're all one person. And we better take responsibility for that fact sooner or later.
Have to take responsibility. And it's in that moment when he finally, because Fei asks the coward, why won't you show him? Why don't you also have Id watch what you always watch? And
powerful question.
The coward says, no, that's mine. I don't want to show it to the person who killed Mother. So he's trying to blame Id because Id's power is what emerged.
True.
Right? And all the beams that came out. So the coward's trying to put that on Id.
So coward is punishing Id.
Yes.
This is all part of the idea of punishing yourself.
Yes.
Of when you hate yourself, when you're mad at yourself, when you punish yourself, this is what you're doing. You feel like you're punishing someone else.
Yes.
But you're just hurting yourself.
Exactly. And Id responds, you should talk. You're the one who killed Mother. No, I didn't. You did it. And they're back and forth yelling at each other, blaming each other. And Fei finally goes, knock it off. We killed Mother. We're the same person. Right? It's no one's fault but ours. It's not because she became Miang or because Father didn't notice. Don't look outside for the reason. Don't blame anyone but yourself. Yes, Mother was Miang, and I know that you suffered. No one could have endured it, but you can't push it onto Id alone. We're all one person. We must become one, right? Fei, walk on your own 2 feet. Face up to the reality that you don't want to see. Show them to Id everything you took for yourself. And that's where he sees the part where Karen sacrificed herself to save him. Id sees for the first time the genuine love of the mother. And that's when Id goes, oh wait, that can't be right. No.
Yes. And denial, immediate denial.
Yep, and then Fei says to him,
this is so right.
The reality isn't all grim, Id.
Yeah.
So Id thought the reality was always awful and terrible because that's all the
'Cause that's
coward
all
would
he
let
was
him
shown.
see.
Yeah.
But now he's starting to realize his perception of reality is Karen Horney's theory of neurosis. His perception of events is not complete. And it's after realizing that he goes, okay, I'm going to give all of the metempsychotic memories of the past contacts' lives to you,
Yeah.
third persona. You decide what should be done about it. I'm giving into you now. And then that's when the personalities
deal.
all merge and become whole again. And then Fei is back in control again. And the id and the ego and the superego all become one being, whole being again. Freaking so good.
I liked it.
This is so freaking good.
If you can understand it, it's really good.
It's really, really freaking awesome. There's a part I skipped over here. I think there's something Id was saying. Oh, yeah. Grahf came seeking the power that exists within me. It is telling the story of that moment when Karen was killed and his father was fighting against Grahf and pitifully losing. So it was basically just saying that Grahf showed up to try to take Fei's body as the contact. He's trying to get his body back.
Yeah.
We, his descendants who inherited his lingering thoughts and memories from him, know only too well. Divided 500 years ago, he would become a part of us both. Lacan became Grahf. He destroyed everything on the face of the earth. He then mastered how to possess the bodies of others by dwelling in their minds. He was probably enabled to do this after his contact with the existence. So I already explained that earlier, but this is the part in the text that confirms that. Okay. So now that he has become one again with his whole personality, he makes contact with the wave existence. Let me just make sure I'm not skipping anything. Oh, then we see the scene. We kind of, he's showing him all of the past memories. So we see Abel and Ellie and Cain on the throne. And
he sees all
the
that.
Gazel, and they're killing them.
And Cain kills.
And that was Cain's original sin, which is a biblical reference
Killing
you were
Abel, right.
guessing at earlier,
Yeah.
right? That he has felt bad about, and why Cain sort of has changed his disposition by this point in the game, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, he killed Cain, or killed Abel originally. So we see that scene play out. And then we see Kim in the lab coat with the nanomachine colony behind him, and Ellie lying on the floor, and all the guys with the soldiers. We saw that back in Zebulun. It's the same cutscene. I won't let you have my child, or whatever. And then we see Lacan at the point where he dies. And he says, "What is this place, my execution site? Why do you turn on me? I thought we were friends. Who is it? Did I cause this?" As he's looking around, Lacan being confused, because Grahf was in control. "What has happened to me? What have I become?" He says, "I will live, even if I go to hell, I will live to the end of the world." This is because they're showing Lacan as, the sprite is Id. It's the Id sprite with the red hair. But he kind of bends down, and then the Grahf costume comes on. And the way I see this is Lacan dies there, and Grahf lives on. And Grahf says, "I will live, even if I go to hell, I will live till the end of the world. And if the world does not come to an end, I will destroy it with my own hands." And this is the motif kind of happening through all these scenes, is that Ellie and Fei kind of keep saying back to each other, I think back and forth, live in these final moments.
Yes,
you continue to live on.
Yeah,
so
that's
Ellie, as Abel bends over and is holding Ellie, she's dying, she's live. And then Kim is saying to Ellie, who's on the floor, I think, maybe it's the other way around, maybe Ellie's saying it to him, but live.
I think it's Ellie singing it to him every time.
Yeah, and then Ellie, as Sophia, when she crashes into Merkava, says live, and he takes that the wrong way. Grahf does in that moment, right? I'll destroy everything.
Live forever and then kill everyone.
So he becomes a whole person again. He's got all of his memories back. He's ready to make contact with the wave existence. This part is really cool.
Yeah, it's pretty trippy.
So, essentially what happened is this engine, this energy engine that was, now as the wave existence describes it in the game's text, humans created the Zohar modifier.
Okay.
In Perfect Works, it's changed a little bit to where it was discovered.
So this is the 2001.
2001: A
the
Space
Obelisk,
Odyssey
yeah.
obelisk reference.
Yes. Totally.
It's a
and
slab.
It already kind of looks that way anyways.
Yeah.
But
And
it has an
it's
eye on
like,
it,
who
and it's
knows
red.
when it came, and this is actually a little bit more elaborated on in Xenosaga a little bit.
Oh, really?
I think the very first scene of Xenosaga 1 is them discovering the monolith,
Oh, sweet.
the Zohar, like pulling it out of the ground. But anyways, that's the 2001 Odyssey reference.
Totally.
But anyways, whether it was created or whether it was discovered is not really that pertinent. The important part is that the reason it has infinite energy potential is because it connected to a higher dimension and
Yeah.
pulled this godlike being into it called the wave existence.
It says in particular, which is so strange, but it says it through the path of Sephiroth.
Yeah, through the path of Sephiroth.
It attained that, but then it pulled it down.
Yeah.
So it attained enlightenment, like just think of it in Buddhist terms. It attained the highest enlightenment, and then it pulled the essence down to earth and imprisoned it basically.
Imprisoned it
trapped
inside of the Zohar modifier.
And that's crazy.
So, should we talk about what Sephiroth is real quick? As
You
the
see the
reference?
symbol a little bit later on. I don't know that it's worth going like on a huge thing
Yeah,
about,
just like
'cause it's just a small
quick
note here.
tangent, right?
Yeah, but we can show it.
So-
it's pretty cool.
In Kabbalistic, mystical, like Jewish mystical tradition, right? I talked about Ein Sof earlier, which is like what God was before he was God of like the Old
timeless,
Testament,
outside
right?
of time, yeah.
Ein Sof is like the unknowable, like
Yeah, incomprehensible.
higher dimensional being like the wave existence is.
Yeah.
That's what Ein Sof is. But Ein Sof, in creating the universe, basically there were like emanations or attributes of God that make up the different like notes, or nodes, I should say, in this what's called the Sephiroth.
Yeah.
And so like each one of these things, I'll put this on screen, each one of these, and you see some of the names here. Again, a lot of this stuff was referential for Final Fantasy VII as well.
Oh, yes.
So you have like
Sephiroth.
you have like Sephiroth, the villain,
Yeah.
but also you have like Tiferet. That's like where
nice.
Tifa's name
Tifa.
comes from. And there's a couple of others on this.
Well, I'd like to point out one in particular. I think it's number 5 that represents Mars and
Yeah.
war and destruction. It's
Yeah.
on that side of that side of God, I guess, and it's called Gebura.
Yep, there you
And
go.
Gebura is in the Japanese. Gebler
Yes.
is pronounced Gebura,
That's right.
but Honeywood translated it into the Gebler
Gebler.
because he probably didn't freaking know.
Probably
what
didn't
this
know what it was a
was.
reference to.
And the Google didn't. Well, I think maybe technically Google might have existed around 98 or 7, or 98.
Yeah.
But not. Anyways, having access to all this kind of stuff was not so much a thing until kind of like our generation, a little more recently. But it would be pronounced Gebura, not Gebler.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, that's one of them as well.
So
The
Sephiroth.
idea is it's like enlightenment, right?
Yeah.
It's all in your mind. You access the first hinge point, which is like the moon. Is it the moon?
I don't remember.
This
This
one?
one down here?
No, this is you, and then you access the moon.
Oh, I see.
And then from the moon, you can go to Venus or somewhere, and then there's the sun. Anyways, it's all in your mind, and it's a way to attain enlightenment, right? It's a way to bring out the attributes of God within yourself. Within yourself, yeah.
Right.
And you do it through meditation, right?
Right.
So there's your normal life, and then from that first, once you reach that first point in your mind, then that gives you access to everything else. And if you're able to travel within your subconscious, you can eventually arrive at some point that would be a God-like thing at some point. Those top 3 on the left, right? So Binah, Keter, and what's that last one?
Hokmah, I think.
Hokmah. Those are technically considered that humans just can't go there. There's like a wall. You draw an imaginary line
like that
in
one there.
between them. Well, you draw an imaginary one just there, so showing that like humans can do all sorts of things, but no one's ever gone there before. Like that's like true enlightenment and true godliness, and that's like unachievable for us finite humans.
Yeah.
But it seems as though we created a machine, well, the humans of Xenogears created a machine that was somehow able to attain that highest,
Transcend up into
that highest enlightenment level, and which is where God was, and then pulled it down, which is crazy. So anyways,
Yeah, so Sephiroth just, I think it literally means emanations. And each of these little nodes, these are 10 attributes of Ein Sof, right? And it's how he reveals himself and continuously creates both the physical realm and the chain of the higher metaphysical realms. So that's what Sephiroth is.
Yeah, it's the knowledge of God. But when the crazy ship, whatever you call it, the
Eldridge?
No. The new triangle.
Oh, the
pyramid
Merkava.
one. The Merkava. When the Merkava shoots one of its guns, you see the path of Sephiroth kind of symbol.
Yeah, and the symbol's on it.
And it lines all the way up, and then it just lets out this massive blast.
That's right.
That's where I don't know that blast has anything to do. I think it was just a cool symbol.
It just looks cool.
They just put it there.
It's just a reference.
Yeah, but it was pretty sweet.
Anyway, so that's what happened, is the wave of existence got trapped in the Zohar modifier, and it's trying to get back to its higher dimension again. But he essentially describes, and I wrote this all down, like all of its dialogue, but I don't want to read it all. I'll just use it for reference if I have to.
Okay.
What happened was that Abel is essentially the original person that Fei was.
Yeah.
Right, the first incarnation of Fei.
Yes. Abel was
boy.
The sole survivor of the Eldridge crash.
Yes.
There was one human that lived somewhere.
One human on that entire ship survived the crash, and it was Abel.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one, if you want to call it genuine human, that was on this planet ever, because the rest of them were created by the Kadamony.
By machines, yeah.
So he's the one human, like legitimate human, that survived that Eldridge crash on this planet. But he was a refugee of this war that was happening, this galactic war. So he was traveling on that ship, probably being taken somewhere to be relocated or to find a family or whatever. He's being taken somewhere else. He was maybe a refugee of that planet that got blown up by Deus, I don't know.
Who knows?
But
that'd be crazy.
He found his way into the room where the Zohar modifier was. And he made contact with it. He touched it.
Before or after it crashed?
Before.
So this is why he survived.
Yes.
This is the reason he survived.
He contacted the Zohar and contacted the wave existence. He and the wave existence communicated.
Yeah.
And the way that he describes this, the wave existence describes this, is kind of interesting. Being but only a child, you defined my existence with your desire to return to your mother. Because the wave existence is this like other dimensional being. It's like it doesn't really relate to our human experience in this dimension that we're in.
Yeah.
So it's trapped inside of there, but its contact with Abel gave it some like tether to this dimension. It like had some purpose to its being here. It started to understand where it was and how it should operate in this dimension, if that makes sense.
That's cool.
By coming in contact with with Abel's mind, right? And Abel's desire at that time was a mother, because he was an orphaned child.
Yeah.
So it says, you defined my existence with your desire to return to your mother. Thus I came to prepare the mother's will. That will is Elheim. So he wanted to make a companion, a mother companion, the wave existence, for Abel.
For Abel.
And because he's inside of the Zohar modifier, which is powering the Kadamony, which has the ability to create organic matter, he's able to make a mother for this child, right? That was the original mother, the purple hair. However, at the same time, Deus, the system itself, has its own protocol to revive itself, which is the Miang side of it. So the Miang and Eli, the will of the Zohar, which is the Eli side, and the protocol of the Deus system, which is the Miang side, both came into this original mother.
When did that separate?
It separated when she created, as they say, two clones of herself.
Of herself.
Yeah, and she went back into the Kadamony system, which we'll see in a minute. But Ellie and Miang were separated at that time. My will was incarnated through a biocomputer Kadamony, which was vital for Deus. After combining with me, the biocomputer evolved its functions, and that bioplant generated a central element. That is her. I was split by your contact. My physical form or flesh stayed in Zohar, while my will went to Elheim, and then my power went into you. So the wave existence's power went into Fei as the contact, his will went into Elheim, and his physical, whatever that green spiritual thingy is, stayed trapped inside the Zohar. So they each have a piece of the wave existence in them, and they need to return it so he can break out and destroy the Zohar modifier and go back to his higher dimension.
Interesting. It's like E.T. He doesn't belong here. You got to send him back home.
That's why I waited to unite with you, and now it is fulfilled. My only remaining desire is to break this cage of fleshly existence. In order to do that, I must become perfect by combining with Elheim, as well as my other split physical form Deus. In order to destroy Zohar, I need the strength that was attributed to you. So you got to destroy Zohar. You have the power to do that. Let me keep looking here. Originally, Ellie's release should have been performed by me, the one who desires to return back to the higher dimension, but I'm bound to the system just as she is, so I'm unable to participate. You're the only one who can release her from the spell. Just as Deus and I are inseparable, you and her are also inseparable. That's because part of the wave existence is in both of them.
Okay.
He goes on to say that the wave existence played some role, might have had some role in all the trauma that Fei has gone through. He's almost like, well, I know you've had a terrible traumatic life.
The existence is empathizing with him a little.
Yeah, I know that your contact with me has caused this, and it's been sad to witness that, kind of a thing. And Fei says, I disagree. I can't blame anything or anyone besides myself. Regardless of what may have happened in the past, with the passing of time, the cause becomes more remote. It is a problem that comes from within myself that I myself must deal with. This is extremely profound. It is a concept I agree with so completely.
Me too,
and I feel like I watch so many people who struggle, whether it's with mental health issues. I mean, I do too, but I mean, everybody to some extent has problems, right?
Right.
But there's a way of staying stuck in that forever, which is to point out.
Yes. And say,
your fault. This
Here's
happens
a list
to
of
me.
all the people who were mean to me in high school. Yeah.
It's because of all that stuff that I ended up this way.
Yeah.
Now, this is by no means meant to say that people aren't genuine victims, because they are. But there's nothing you can do about it. It happened.
Yeah.
And what you have control over is how you respond to it, how you take responsibility for what you become, and how you deal with it. It's only something you can do within yourself. True introspection. You can't go to all those people who harmed you and pull them over and say, fix what you did wrong, fix what you broke.
Right, make it better.
They can't.
I'm right.
And as long as you stay in that mentality of pointing the finger at everyone else who harmed you or who did you wrong, you will stay stuck in your neurosis.
Yep, you're doing yourself a disservice.
Fei was victimized by his mother, by Karen, horrifically abused and victimized. But it isn't until Fei takes responsibility and says, as he says here, regardless of what may have happened in the past, with the passing of time, the cause becomes more remote.
Yeah, that's true.
It is a problem that comes from within myself that only myself must deal with.
Do you know what, I learned this recently. Well, I just thought of this recently, actually, just a couple days ago. The word resentment is, I believe it's French, ressentiment, something like that. And sentiment is like sentiment, right? Feelings. And then just means again.
Yeah.
So resentment means to feel again, right? So the initial thing happened, it made you feel bad. But somehow your mind decides to feel that bad feeling again, right?
Yeah.
And your resentment means you keep re-feeling that bad
Re-experiencing
feeling
it.
over and over. And it's like, yes, a bad feeling happened, but how often did your mind conjure up those bad feelings over and over and over to re-feel over and over and over? So resentment means re-feeling. And when you think of it that way, it's like the damage done to your mind through the resentment is likely far greater than the damage done from the sentiment,
Yes.
the initial sentiment, right? The initial
The
feeling.
fact that you keep reliving it, you
And
keep experiencing
You're
it.
making it worse.
The post-traumatic stress
But
of
you
it,
do it
right?
to yourself, yeah. And it's true that there can be disorders about that and that you don't always have control over it. But you do have to understand that it is within
You
your
are the only one
mind.
who has any power
Exactly.
to overcome it.
No one else
to get
can
the
do
help that you
Yes.
need, to start pursuing the self-reflection,
Yes.
to talking to professionals,
Meditate sometimes.
meditation, finding
Yeah.
whatever path
Yes.
that can return you to that psychological wholeness.
It's within.
You
It's
have to
nowhere
start
else.
the journey.
Yes.
You have to do the work. No one else, especially the people who harmed you in the first place, are going to come and say I'm sorry and it's going to fix it. It won't. There is nothing anyone else other than you can do to begin that path to wholeness again.
Yeah.
And it's when Fei realizes this and that he can have the mystical experience with the wave existence and understand the wisdom, the gnosis that the wave
Yes.
existence is trying to give.
The Sophia.
Lacan couldn't accept the gnosis
Right.
because he was still blaming his situation. No, it's not my
And
responsibility.
he wanted to use that newfound power to just
to
kill
go
everything.
kill everyone.
Yeah, and it was,
His desire for vengeance and all these things had totally taken over, and he wasn't taking responsibility because he was afraid of his powerlessness. He didn't want to face that fear of his powerlessness.
Yeah.
He didn't want to accept that.
I like that.
Fei accepted it.
I think I mentioned before, maybe an episode or two ago, about Solzhenitsyn, who wrote the Gulag Archipelago, and how he was in the gulags for 20 years for some, I don't know, the Soviet Union just put, oh, actually, no, I think I do know. He was in prison in Germany. So he fought for the Russians in World War II, but he was imprisoned in Germany. And when he went back to the Soviet Union, they sent everyone who had any contact with the Western world just right away to the gulags. Didn't matter if you were fighting for this Soviet Union or not. Didn't matter why. If you had contact with the West, you were corrupted, you were compromised, to the gulags you go, right? So that's how they filled up a lot of the gulags initially. And he was saying, how did we get to this point? How did our country, whose fault is it? Why are we here? What happened in our country's history to where we're throwing random people in jail all the time for no reason? And we have this crazy military police system that's just horrible and just killing tons of people all the time. And his ultimate conclusion was, it's my fault, right? Because who else's fault could it possibly be? This is my life. I'm here. And he ended up taking responsibility for something that was so 100% not his fault. He was probably conscripted into the military to begin with. He didn't want to go to Germany. He just happened to not die. He got captured, was in prison. Now he's in prison in his own country because he got imprisoned in Germany fighting a war that, anyways, it's a whole screwy situation. Yet he came out of all of that saying, it's my fault that this happened because this all happened slowly and I could have done things to prevent it. And what can I do now to fix my life at this point?
Yes.
And he went on to do many great things. In fact, part of one of the hinging turning points in the Soviet Union collapsing was him because he eventually did get out of the jails and he just defected right away. And he had these books in his mind. He had a brilliant memory and he was able to kind of write it all down, and it all just came out. Like nobody knew that this was happening in the Soviet Union. And he came out and he showed everyone, this is the atrocities that are happening in this country. And that slowly started the slow downfall of the Soviet Union. So he was in a horrible situation, not his fault, in prison for something. It's not his fault, completely not his fault. And he turned it into one of the greatest acts of revelatory goodness that anybody can really do, that is like, I'm going to reveal this to the world and I can do it, and whereas if he just wallowed in his own self-pity, he probably would have died in the gulags. He probably would have just become nothing and nothing would have ever happened, and he'd live his whole life resenting and blaming others for what, and even if technically it's not his fault, deciding to accept blame for it anyways
Yes.
is the turning point. And because that's all you can do. You
Yes.
can't do anything but accept that I had something to do with this. This didn't all happen randomly, willy-nilly one day. I could have spoken up and told the truth. This is his big thing. Always tell the truth. The Soviet Union basically didn't let you tell the truth. If you've ever seen the TV series Chernobyl,
Yes.
that's
It's
how
so
it happened.
Good.
They're afraid of telling the truth. Everyone is
Was
afraid
afraid.
of telling the truth. And Solzhenitsyn said that's the problem. And then he had to think back in his life. How many times did I lie out of convenience or because I just didn't want to tell the truth? Thousands of times, all the time. He did it all the time. You had to do it living in the Soviet Union. Otherwise, you'd be thrown in the gulags. And so he's like, I didn't tell the truth thousands of times. That those are my fault. I'll take responsibility for those, and I'll do better. And
Do
anyways,
something about it.
it's amazing stuff. And that's like, I think Eli Wiesel has similar stuff with when he was in the Holocaust. And like, you just find these people in these horrible situations who come up with this type of stuff that's just like, man, your life, it really is yours. And your mind is yours. And do with it what you will. But the more that you blame and scapegoat, then the less control you have over your own mind and your own life.
Yeah.
In order to really control your own mind and your life, you need to take responsibility and accept the blame for whatever's wrong around you and then go fix it. Because once you accept it's your fault, then you're like, well, who's going to fix it?
Motivated to
I'm
fix.
going to fix it because it's my fault. And
Yeah.
then, boom, all of a sudden people start fixing problems that they would have just otherwise said, oh, somebody else should fix it.
Yeah. Even
Anyway,
if
so
you
much
don't even if you don't want to necessarily word it as it's my fault, you could still say it's my problem.
Sure, it's my responsibility. It's my problem.
responsibility
Yes,
to
sure.
do something about it.
Fair enough.
Even if it's not my fault.
Fair enough.
Even if you can just go that far,
Yes.
it will at least put you on a path to where something can be done
Exactly.
about it.
But I thought it was so profound when Solzhenitsyn said, well, telling the truth is no one tells the truth. Oh, wait, I didn't tell the
Yes.
truth. Who knows? Maybe one of those truths would have stopped all of this from happening 30 years previous. Like, who knows? And so, well, I don't even think he was 30 at the time he was drafted, but he found a way. He found some way that he was technically responsible. And then he owned up to it, and he took responsibility for it and went out and changed the world.
Yeah.
And anyone can do that. Anyone in any situation can do that. But you're right. You might want to start off not blaming yourself initially, and just at least the word responsibility is the good word.
Like,
at least take some responsibility for it so that you can do something.
you don't have to accept like the shame of fault. That's not really the point of the exercise. The point is to say, it's empowering to say, I have control. I can do something about it. Instead of,
Sure.
this was done to me, it's out of my control.
Yeah, all these
It's
other
all
people have
happening
control, but
to me.
I don't. Yeah.
That keeps you stuck
Psychologically, yeah.
in the coward's room.
Yep.
Or in id's sector
reliving
of
or
resentment.
resentment,
Yes.
refeeling those old emotions over and over and over again. And that's a horrible place
Don't
to be.
until you say, no, I have control. It is my responsibility. I can do something, that you feel empowered to take a step and go somewhere and start on the path to psychological wholeness.
Yes.
Whichever path it is that you come into that you feel works for you. And there are many of them.
Yes.
There are many, many, many of them. There's
And-
so
and
many
new
religions.
paths get invented all the time.
So many psychoanalysts and psychologists who have different
Yes.
theories on
And
how
different philosophers
which one
and-
works for you. Find it,
Yeah.
take it,
Yeah.
take responsibility for your own psychology, your own brokenness, and start putting it back together again, one piece at a time,
Yeah.
and get there. But you have to take responsibility for that journey. No one's going to
No one
do
can
it for you.
And one of the thoughts, we didn't get into this because it's the Lacan, the phallus and incest.
Yes.
We are going to get into it. We are. But the Oedipus thing,
Yeah.
one of the desires, one of the reasons for the Oedipus situation is that you want someone to fix your problems, and your mom always fixed your problems.
Yes.
Let me just go back to mom. Things were so much easier when it was just me and mom.
Mm-hmm.
Back when I can't even really remember, but I feel it. And
Yeah.
mommy, just fix this for me. And she
Yep.
can't. She will accept you back. She will accept you in, but it's to your own detriment because she, try as she might, she cannot fix your actual problem.
You know what's funny about that is
It's so tempting.
my own mother struggles with that. She's
Yeah.
the type of person who wants to fix everybody.
I think a lot of women are
yeah.
like that, and that does happen. That's a thing, and that's why the Oedipal situation is theorized at all.
I think the
in
hardest
Freud.
lesson she's had to learn is to allow her kids to
make
take control of their own
mistakes,
paths in
yeah,
lives,
to live.
to make mistakes and to fix themselves. And it's hard. It's hard for some people to like come to that.
You literally
realization.
grew the kid in your stomach, and they're having a hard time. It's like, can't I do something?
Yep.
But at some point, it's like, no.
Yep.
Your mom is great, by the way.
She's great. She's great. she's a wonderful human being. All right. So we get through that, and I love this scene because Fei goes immediately to Wiseman, to his father.
Oh,
to
yeah.
try to help him.
And he calls him
Dad.
Dad. Because when he accepted that change within himself, he's also like, he doesn't want to call Grahf Dad, but because of what he just went through, he knows that is my dad.
Yep.
I don't like it. I don't want him to be my dad. I want to just call him Grahf and be like, you're bad. But he calls him Dad anyways, even though it's clearly Grahf presenting before him. And he's just like, because sometimes he slips up. He's like, Grahf, no, I mean Dad.
Well,
He's being very direct.
Or he's like,
or Lacan, I mean Dad. But he always ends up calling him father.
I think, though, in the cockpit originally, it is still Wiseman at that time. Well, actually, I think it's Khan. You see his bandana and everything. But he's like leaning into him and like talking to him, but then Grahf takes over and the suit comes on and he like grabs him by the throat and like lifts him up.
Yeah.
And he's like, "What the Grahf? What are you doing?"
Yes, that's true.
That's a really cool moment.
But even because in the very end he is dressed like Grahf still in the very end.
Yes.
But Fei is just like, you're my dad. And
Yes.
You're all screwy and loopy, but you're my dad.
Exactly.
And you can become whole just like I did too.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So there's a little bit of a Star Wars-y thing going on here where Fei refuses to fight Grahf.
I will not fight you, Father. Yes.
And he's like, fine, I'll kill your friends.
Yes.
And he's like, no, you can't do that.
Sister, you have
Fine.
a younger sister.
It's basically exactly that scene.
It's exactly it.
Anyway, it's kind of funny. But,
Yep.
this is where, it gets to the point where they fight, and you're in the Xenogears now. So the Xenogears is the Veltal.
It's a new version.
Evolved
Yes.
due to its contact with the wave existence.
With the wave existence. So it's like white and blue and stripy.
The ultimate form
Yeah.
of the Xenogears.
I didn't catch that at first. I was like, wait, which one's me? Because I was like, the dark one, what the heck?
That's like the true Veltal, which is Graf's gear.
Yeah.
And you're in the Xenogears, which is like the evolved Veltal after contact with the wave existence.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Anyways, it's a pretty cool gear design, and its kind of gimmick is you can transform to this hyper mode. I forget what it's called. Where, anyways, you have to build up your attack levels without using death blows up to a certain level, and then you transform into like the hyper mode, and then your attacks do like mega damage or something like that. So you survive a few rounds of damage by just doing normal attacks, and then bam, you can unleash.
You bravely default.
Which is kind of similar to like the id system mode of the last Veltal we had.
Yeah.
Like
it seems like just an evolution.
Like the Go-10, and it's similar attack names.
Yeah.
Anyways, you beat Grahf in that fight, which I think is pretty hard to lose. In fact, I think it's a gimme fight mostly.
It was pretty short.
But Fei feels himself being drawn in by the Zohar modifier. So this is not the wave existence. This is Deus trying to like absorb the contact.
Yeah.
Right? And what Grahf does here, because of the talking back and forth Fei's been doing with him, the philosophizing, Grahf is still partially, he's not the contact really, but he's like, he can confuse the Zohar into thinking to buy time that he's the contact. So he allows himself to be absorbed to buy Fei time so he can get away. That's essentially what happens there. But what he says here is Lacan's imperfect secondary contact with the wave existence split his personality into two. Eventually his body died, but the original Lacan transmigrated, bringing the destiny of becoming a contact with him. He was reborn as your present body. So when Lacan died, the contact transmigrated into Fei. But this is the important part. The remaining persona, Grahf, just his desires, Lacanian desires, lived on separately by possessing the bodies of others. That is Grahf. That is me. I may have inherited Lacan's will, but I'm not the same as the contact Lacan. It is impossible for me to make real contact. There would be no true melding and release. Even though our bodies may be different, I am still half of you. That fact remains. Although I'm imperfect, I can merge temporarily with Zohar and thus may be able to buy some time for you. So he sacrifices himself to allow Fei to get away, to destroy the Zohar and free the wave existence. That's now, and save Ellie. That's now what we have to do moving forward.
Yeah.
And then the last scene there is Citan and Fei and Bart
Well, I
going
love
to the
it because this
Kadamony.
heavy scene happens, and then all of a sudden we're at the floor of the Yggdrasil or something like that, and it's just
Oh, before that though. Before that. You're right.
and it's just
funny.
like, oh right, we're gonna destroy it, and it's like, holy cow! Whoa, this game could have used a nice little transition between those two.
Yes.
But you know.
But before that, they go see the Kadamony though.
Yeah, because Fei just starts explaining to everyone everything. Fei's just like, okay, guys, I know what's up now, and then all of a sudden we're just there.
This is
And
where
he's
we
like-
learn about the fact
Yeah.
that the original mother made 2 copies.
Yes,
it's
and,
in this
and
dialogue.
she's there still up in the thing.
Yeah. So they go up to it. It's like sitting there on like a cliff side or whatever.
Yep.
And Fei says, in order to revive itself one day, Deus detached the Zohar modifier core. After this core unit came down here, the Kadamony, a single woman awoke and arose from out of it. She's the mother of all humanity. After she awoke, she used all her power to bear several beings. This would be the Emperor and the Gazel ministry, who are the ancestors of the whole humanity. Finally, she gave birth to 2 replicas of herself to be humanity's caretakers. 2 selves, the human mother and the weapon, the subject and the complement. That is Ellie and Miang. I, the sole survivor of the colony ship, met Ellie, and everything started from there. The land of Genesis, Kadamony, this is the place. And then he goes on to say, usually human memories cannot be passed down through the generations. Humans do not normally have the ability to compress and store memories in their introns. This is what we talked about a couple podcasts ago. But Ellie and I and Miang are different. Due to our connection with the wave existence, that is due to Zohar's ability to change possible phenomena, we can clearly store data in our introns. In other words, we can leave behind memories to be inherited by our descendants. Just as the wave existence is bound inside the Zohar, the information is affixed to me, so to speak, by some of the power of the wave existence. So that's how they're able to store memories of their past lives in their introns, which was the whole thing we talked about a couple episodes ago that Krelian found out using his nanotechnology.
Yeah.
And then after that scene, dun, 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 dun.
Hey guys, and then Bart's like, I got a great idea, and we're
This-
just gonna go, and there's point. Oh, it's the craziest scene
I don't
ever.
even know how much I want to like try to explain this crazy plan
I
because
would
it's
say
freaking crazy.
It's crazy, but it works, and that's all you need to really know.
Yeah.
There's a shield, and there's 1.67 seconds that the shield is
Between
open when
the
it
blast
shoots.
that they have to like get inside the
Yes,
Merkava.
and they can't go fast enough, so they're going to use the other Yggdrasil power sources, and then they're going to use the freaking Nortune Yggdrasil mech.
4,
Yeah, the
Yggdrasil
massive
4.
thing, and he's going to do all that and put all his shields in the front so that the blast will hit, but it'll be okay, and then it'll go right through.
Yeah.
And that's that. And
It's like a 20-minute scene to explain
it's
this
really
plan.
long because I feel like they feel in this game they feel the need to explain themselves a little too much, despite the fact that they don't explain
Enough.
It's a weird thing, but it's because they bit off more than they can chew.
Sure.
But yeah, that's essentially the gist of it. And so then it works. The
attack the
plan works as
Merkava.
done.
It works,
It
but
works
then
as
it
planned.
kind of didn't.
It worked too well, is it, right?
Yeah, I think like
they
it's a
get
bunch of
there,
other explosions
He breaks
get-
the gun, and then the whole thing blows up, and it's like, oh my gosh!
And then the Merkava comes crashing down.
It all comes down, and they're like, wait, Ellie was on the ship. We're supposed to save Ellie. And Bart's like, whoops. And Citan has like 5 lines in a row of, I should have known that would happen. Dang it, I made a miscalculation. I should have known. This was obviously going to be the result. And he's just like beating himself up.
Yeah.
And That's basically where we stopped.
And then the nanomachines
yes.
start transforming the Merkava into the final
Earth,
form
basically.
of Deus, and it starts terraforming the planet.
Making the whole planet, which I can assume is what happened to the previous planet that got destroyed, was this.
Maybe.
Because as soon as the thing melts with the planet, it just starts breaking everything and turning everything gray. Everything becomes lifeless and dead. And it's just like this shockwave going out that you would assume envelops the whole Earth, but I'm guessing it just stays
in a certain area.
Yeah, that was a pretty cool scene.
Yeah.
But the next scene after that is hilarious because once again, the music, and they're like, okay, that plan didn't work. Time for a backup. Now we really got to do things right. Okay, let's go over here. It's just like, oh my gosh, you guys. It is so funny.
Anyways, the point is they gotta go destroy Deus, and in particular the Zohar, to free the Way of Existence and get Ellie back. And
yes,
this is going to be our final dungeon of the game.
This will be the final.
Now there is one more optional area you can go to that gives some more context to the Zebwim era, to Kim and Ellie of that time, and Esmeralda. So I would suggest taking a look at that first, and then going and doing the final dungeon, because there's some good stuff that comes from that. Some really good stuff.
Oh, cool.
In relation to even with Miang, Miang's role in that time period is actually really interesting. Some really good stuff there. So we'll cover that next time. We'll cover the final dungeon and the end of the game, and kind of just summarize all through the rest of what's left. And then we'll have one more episode with some other people who'll come on, and we'll try to really work into the hardcore weeds and resolve any further questions that people have.
The question specifically, no guarantee if we're going to read your question, but
we'll try.
There is a way.
There's a way.
If you go on Patreon.com and
I will prioritize
abso-freaking-lutely
Patreon questions first.
Yes, questions asked through Patreon will be our first priority, and there's really no other way to deal with
because there's just
the volume
a lot
of questions. But
Yeah.
I feel like we've done Xenogears for 2 years now. It's crazy. It's like,
and what's
oh
funny
my
about
gosh, it's coming to an end. I can't believe it.
It's been about the same amount of time that we spent on FF8 and Nier.
When we did our monthly
It's just that it's been weekly, so it feels way more.
It really does. It really does feel that way. But
And Xenogears is a bigger game. This is probably the biggest game we might ever cover.
I hope so. I don't think we should do 20 episodes again for another game. Anyways, we really didn't even have enough time to cover everything, though. That's the crazy part.
I know. But for the next episode, I will have the list of games to cover next time. Now, just to soften the blow of this, because I know a lot of FF10 people were really upset that Xenogears won, and they were probably hoping Final Fantasy X would be the next one. Listen, I'm mentally broken after having talking about this game.
Slightly easier game that's less
We're gonna do something in between giant JRPGs.
Yes.
That can just
60-hour
take
game.
a break, and it might only be an episode or two, or maybe 3 or something.
Preferably
something short.
I would prefer that.
Something short and light and not as complex, and something I don't have to spend 20 hours a week researching to know how to talk about it. Something. So, and it's not going to be a Japanese game. I want to specifically get away from JRPGs for a second and just do something else. So I'm thinking about Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, which is a freaking phenomenal game.
It's shorter though.
With some really, really big themes, and it's super short. It can be beaten in 6 to 8 hours or something. Or we could go back to Mass Effect, which is also a shorter game. It's only about 18, 20 hours long. Or Ghost of Tsushima or something like that.
Yeah.
Just something else that's not a JRPG, because I just need a break. And then after that, we'll go back to Final Fantasy X or Tactics or 6. You can choose between those 3. We'll let that be the next choice.
Okay. Sounds good.
So, but for the next one, it's not going to be a JRPG, just so you know. But it will be shorter. Okay. It will probably only be a month at most, whatever the next game is. And then we'll get back to JRPGs again. Anyways, thanks for watching, everybody. We appreciate you. Looking forward to finishing this up next week. Like I said, just play to the end of the game. That's the assignment for the next one. And then for the following week, you'll have to read Perfect Works. That'll be the homework for the next one. So play to the end of the game, read Perfect Works, and we'll finish this thing up.
All right.
Till then, peace out.